Studio 120 at Westfield Technical Academy. This is WCPC Channel 15 at 89.5 FM, WSKB Westfield.
You know, I was going to say that I didn't get my trains at the top of the hour as we discussed, but that's not important right now. What was there anything important that we needed to know for production right now? You know, were you giving me a cue at all earlier?
Oh, Pete, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And I was saying when I was driving in, I couldn't hear it on the car radio.
Oh, okay.
Really?
All right.
Yep.
So you might want to just quickly check into that. Now, most of the people I know are on the video side, Channel 15, and then again playback on YouTube.
I'm getting my signal back from them.
Okay.
Oh, maybe it's my old car.
All right. All right. Okay. So time for city councilor candidate interviews. Dave Flaherty is at large. He is our first person into the studio, and we're not going to drill you with the 5 or 10 questions like we have at the when we did this in the past, because there's only Ward 1 is contested, and we're going to have the same questions for those that keep it fair. But at this point, we're just going to riff and go free form and just talk about what your concerns are with the city. What are your thoughts on how things are going to be done. And I guess that's exactly where we will start right now. What's on your mind?
What's on my mind? Well, thanks for having me in. And I should tell people that I'm running for the 7th term, and this is the first time since the beginning that we've been uncontested. And for me, that's a big problem. I really think people should be involved and serve on these boards and commissions, run for office. I heard you talking earlier about people online complaining on Facebook. They have to get out there and do something, and if they don't want to do it themselves, they have to elect people that are going to do what they want. And right now, we don't have any choices this year other than, Ward 1 and the mayor's race.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's going to be a low turnout election because of that. And
yeah.
I think, the citizens have to get engaged and involved and step up.
Yeah, I'm just going to ask you to be mindful of where your microphone is.
Yeah, because I talk quietly.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, mild-mannered. And
yeah.
Actually, if you swing it out in front of you, you can manhandle those things.
Yeah, but
good,
then, my face isn't on TV, and I have a pretty face, so.
You could swing it even further past. Keep
this
going
way.
there.
So he's the only one.
Better?
Look at that. See, you're perfect.
He's the only one here with a face without a face for radio.
Yeah.
Correct, yes.
Oh, okay.
Hey.
All right. So so anyhow, that's my plug is don't complain, get out there and do something about it. And whether it's run for office yourself or get out there and help somebody get elected, or definitely show up to vote. I mean, a 15% voter turnout is horrendous. When everybody's not happy, seemingly people are complaining all the time about everything. Everybody has different opinions about roads and water and sewers and dams and levees and drinking water and schools, and there's all these hot topics, and nobody's standing up. And I don't know if they just feel that everybody that's elected right now is absolutely doing a wonderful job and couldn't do any better, or if they feel it's grossly underpaid, or they don't want to put up with the hassle of running, what it is. But,
or is the apathy too? It's like, well, geez, what can I really do about it?
yeah. Well, you can do something. If on the city council you get 7 votes, you can do something. But
except for deciding whether or not to have a rotary up by the turnpike.
Well,
some things are out of the city's hands, right?
I wouldn't say that.
Really? Okay. All right.
I know the state has a lot of control. It's their road and stuff, but
Yeah.
Even on something like that, if you get, like I told somebody on Facebook about that Mostly Ave thing, if you get enough butts in the seats at a meeting, it does affect how people consider things.
Yeah.
Like, wow, people, if you're a city councilor sitting there and you got a full room in front of you going on one issue, you're going, maybe I need to dig a little deeper into that issue and find out more than just what's on my council share or something like that. Talk to people and things like that. Yeah.
A lot of times they look at it as, some advocate brought in 20 people to support their message. And they don't think that those people have independent thought and came on their own. They think it's a coordinated effort to try to influence an action, and they just kind of ignore it. And that's a sad state as far as I'm concerned. These people went out of their way to come in, and I keep telling people all the time, you don't want people spending us all this money on the bike trail. Come out and talk about it, because the bike trail people, they're really, really good at coming out. And
They
about
are.
They show up at every single meeting. They make a really good argument about things, and they're really good advocates for it.
That bike trail people were here last week.
Yep.
Yeah. So, yeah, if you speak up, it can help, and that would mean reaching out to either your ward and or at-large counselors.
Right. Yep. And we don't get involved. I heard you talking about potholes and trees and stuff. it's not the city council's job to fix potholes or trees. And I tell people to use that form on the website all the time. And if I have people that don't want to do it, I'll do it for them. And put in their address.
And when you say the form, we're talking about
C-Click-Fix, yeah, on the city website. It goes into a database. It gets somebody's attention, and people can't say they never saw the message because it's in this database. So it does get fixed, and it helps the city coordinate the the labor efforts. And some of the stuff, you don't fill a truck with pavement and go out and fill one pothole. You kind of have to schedule it. You have to pick up the stuff, and you have to keep it hot, and you have to do a whole bunch in one day, right? And the same thing with tree guys. You don't want to send them out for one limb. You want to send them out to do a whole bunch of stuff all at once. So there's some coordination involved.
Yeah, and speaking of that C-Click-Fix, it's also an app form.
Yep.
And I use the app, I don't want to say often, but I've used it more than once or twice, and it really does work. And you get confirmation that a department has received that message, and it was passed on to a supervisor of another department or wherever it needed to be channeled to.
Just turn off the notifications because you get alerts that say your neighbor has reported blah, blah, blah all the time. And it's just annoying.
I haven't turned those off, and I still click to see what my neighbors are.
Yeah, and it's your neighbor that's not anywhere near you. It's across town. A lot of times.
I haven't witnessed that. It's only been in my immediate area. Up on the north side because I had to fill something in for my father who's up there. So I get hits for that neighborhood as well. But it's a great system. And again, that's who you report to if there's a hole in the front of your house. Your city councilor is not going to.
We can do.
You can do the work for them, but you're not driving around looking for potholes to report.
No, and we don't want to be in a position of talking to the department heads all day long with complaints about that kind of stuff. It's not the role we want to have.
Yeah, the big role for you is budgeting and making sure
budgeting, policy, laws and stuff. But the department heads don't need to deal with us, and it takes away from their day. They if people fill out C-Click-Fix, it's going to get taken care of.
All right. So when you're not talking about roads and potholes and trees. What are your big concerns? What are your interests that are piquing your curiosity or your actions right now?
Well, for me, it's finances and having a long-term plan for a lot of things. We're in a really bad financial situation. We've been really lucky the last couple of years with COVID and stuff, and we got a lot of federal money. We got some state money, so we have a little bit more in our coffers right now than we normally would. We can't just assume that's going to happen over and over and over again. We can't keep spending on this path. We got really lucky.
We've been warned this is one-time money too.
Yeah,
with a lot of it.
We were told that before with the ARA money when Obama was in office. Yet we spent it on hiring employees that never went away. So there's a lot that needs to go into this. We have to address our long-term financial situation. It's not getting better. We owe $350 million or more now to employees in today's dollars, not in future dollars. And I hear some people say that all the time. Oh, we don't have to pay that today. We can pay it over time. But when you pay it over time, it's over $1 billion. This is what we should have right now.
And you're talking OPEB.
OPEB and health, yeah. A pension. We owe about 100 in pension.
All right, I've got a question. What does OPEB stand for? Because I hear that term thrown out there a lot, and I don't know. I don't even know.
You mean what the letters mean, or
yes.
what it is? So
it's
other post-employment benefits.
Okay,
and that in our case is mostly health care, but there is some life insurance.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yep. And it's massive, and the city and it's not only our city, and I hear that all the time too. Well, everybody else is doing it, so we got to do it. Well, you got to fix the problem. We cannot guarantee employees health insurance for life at the ridiculous copays that are out there and the portions that are allocated to employees. The taxpayers can't afford it. The taxpayers are lucky to get anything. Most people now are getting 50% if they work for a regular company. They're paying 50% of the premium, and the company's paying 50% of the premium. When they retire, they go on Medicare. That's the way most of the people in the country have it. They don't get health care for life from their employer. And as you know, health care is one of the things in this country that's costing more and more and more every year. It goes way up higher than the income of people. So it's a serious problem. It has to be addressed, and it's going to take leadership. And unfortunately, it's one of those things that you're going to make people unhappy. So nobody wants to step up and stick their neck out there to make the changes.
And how do you find the money for that? Because the percentage is dictated usually by contractor unions. You can't really change that. So you have to find some other source or Or,
you make the
or
benefits
what
go away. You have to negotiate them away or negotiate better payment plans. And it's going to get to the point where we could be like Springfield and forced into a restructuring. It's just.
Are you saying restructuring or receivership?
Yeah. Well,
pretty much the same thing, right?
Yeah. If you looked, I think it was Mass Live yesterday or the day before, the guy in Springfield, the financial guy, wrote a little book that's becoming really popular because it tells a story of how Springfield went through that. And it's kind of like the phoenix rising from the ashes, and now they're in much better shape because they were able to restructure and think about the way they did things. And
we would be forced into that. Let's see if I'm correct here. When we hit this debt ceiling limit,
levy ceiling potentially,
levy ceiling.
yes.
Yep.
We can't earn our obligations when we hit the levy ceiling, right? And everybody, they would try all these other things first, before you get to that point. So I wouldn't say it's imminent. And maybe not even likely if we can do some things in advance. But it takes.
I remember a few years ago there was a slight threat of us really getting there.
Well, you see what happens now with the housing prices. Everything is crazy during COVID.
Yeah.
So we're having this bubble. So that's giving us some buffer space. If that bubble pops, we could be at that levy ceiling. So you need to bring in more revenue, which is one of the things we want to talk about. Right? We got time here. Yeah.
Yeah. I have to be fair with everyone. I do a quick non-musical break about halfway through. Do you want to do that now and then go up to the top of the hour after that?
Sure. Why not?
Okay, Pete.
Perfect.
Support for community radio on WSKB is provided by Betts Plumbing and Heating Supply Company, an independent, family-owned wholesaler serving Westfield for over 50 years, specializing in plumbing, heating, and industrial piping supplies. On the web at bettsplumbing.com or at 14 Coleman Avenue in Westfield.
Listen to me, Michael Buster McMahon, Mondays 8 to 10 a.m. to learn the stories behind your favorite songs. Or don't. I'm not the boss of you.
Community Radio
89.5 WSKB.
Live from Studio 120 at Westfield Technical Academy, this is WCPC Channel 15 and 89.5 FM, WSKB Westfield.
And there I go. I got so excited about getting back on air
that again,
I chucked my pen right down onto the
I know. And if you
console here, and now I don't have anything to keep my fingers busy with.
I know.
But we're I feel really awkward now.
You want to borrow my pen?
I'll just play with this.
He needs to fidget.
He needs a fidget. You need one of those little spinner thingies.
You know what? I'm gonna have Kathy ask whatever is on her mind, and I need to go.
He has to get his pen.
Yeah.
So there's so many questions. You had something that you were just going to discuss before we took a break.
Oh, talk about revenues. I mean,
Yes.
we have to have more revenues in Westfield. We are close to our tax limit every year.
Correct.
That's a visual they shouldn't see on TV.
And he's good today.
Yeah.
So what are your suggestions for how we can raise the revenue?
I don't know if you know how Prop 2.5 works, but you can only tax 2.5% of the property's value.
Correct.
So once you hit $25 per thousand, that's the max you can go to. So we're getting closer and closer to that. In the last 2 years, we've been really lucky because of the economy the way it's been. We've got some grant money. We made some adjustments going into COVID, anticipating state aid cuts, and the state didn't cut nearly as much as we thought. So we had a little bit extra, and then we got all the state and federal grant money. So we're in decent shape. And the housing market has, the prices are up. I don't know how long they're going to stay up. We don't know. We don't know if if this is going to be the new plateau.
I hope not.
Yeah, it depends if you're buying or selling.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, and then we get other revenues from things like marijuana and excise tax and all that. So that there's a limit on how much that is. It's about 16 million now out of our budget. And then we get state aid, and state aid has been flat, and they're not honoring the commitments they made many years ago for us. So. It's a challenging financial situation. You made a comment when we were off the air, so you're one of the few people that doesn't mind paying taxes. Well, it's not true. I think a lot of people don't mind paying taxes. They just don't want to see their tax money wasted.
Yeah, if we get our money's worth.
If you get your money's worth, which, these days, what does that really mean, get your money's worth? And if you don't feel that you're giving government employees things that you can't get when you're out there working in your job. So, there's a lot of people in town that are middle income. Westfield's not a super wealthy town. Our average income is, pretty average. It's not high.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you have somebody who's making $60,000 a year, and then we're paying other people in the city $120,000 a year to work 35 hours a week and get benefits for life, that rubs some people the wrong way when they're out there in the trenches working 40 hours a week trying to pay their bills. So
try being a dairy farmer.
Right, exactly. Yeah, trying to make money on the milk, and there's a lot of jobs like that,
Yeah.
So one of the big projects, and we got 10 minutes left. So what a big project that I want to talk to you guys about was this data center. There's a public hearing on Monday. And this data center, as proposed, is a significant project for Westfield. And I think it's a really good project as far as what the project will do. For those of you who don't know what a data center is, it's a building that has lots of computer racks in it. And those computers connect to the internet and do all kinds of things like
the server farm.
Massive server farm, yeah. So this is 2.7 million square feet, which is a really big server farm, over 10 different buildings. And most people don't know what a server is, but if you've seen pictures on TV of a data room with stuff blinking lights and those spies, they go in and plug stuff into the computer. That's what it's like. But this potentially could have 120,000 racks in it, which is a lot. Yeah. So
think about the throughput involved there.
Right. Yeah. So it's very, very significant. There's a lot of money being made in these things right now, and everybody uses it without even knowing it. All your apps, they're in server farms. Every time you back up a picture from your cell phone, you take a picture, you click it, that picture goes to a server farm. Right? And I saw a stat recently that every minute of the day, over 50 years worth of video is being uploaded. So just think about that. Every single day, another 50 years has to go be stored somewhere. It's a massive operation, and it's an exploding market. People are working at home. People are closing down the offices and getting rid of their own computers. And in my case, I'm a perfect example of that. I don't have real computers in my office anymore. I have a big hard drive stuff, but all my servers are out in the cloud. And most people don't even know where their cloud is. Like, I'm in 5 different server farm locations. I've never been to any of them, but I trust that the companies that I'm dealing with have them in the right places, and they take care of them and all that. That's the way the cloud works, and that's the kind of business we're trying to attract to Westfield. Now, this particular deal came to us. We didn't go hunting for this. This came to us. They are asking for a massive tax break. They should be paying us, about $2 billion more than they are. So the numbers you've seen in the newspaper, think about paying taxes at 15 cents on the dollar. That's the kind of deal these guys are looking to lock in for 40 years. And for Ken and Pete and I, 40 years in technology is a long time, right? This time, 40 years ago, the IBM PC came out, and it had 2 floppy drives and tiny little amount of memory. It drew 7 amps.
I've got a book down there telling me how to build a 486 PC.
Yeah, 486 was 5 years later.
Yeah.
Right? So in 1981, I was a sophomore in college, and the PC came out. By the time I graduated, the ATs came out. And but think about how much technology has changed in those 40 years, right? What you have in a cell phone now used to take up a room. And
NASA put a man on the moon with a lot less than what this thing will do.
So, and these data farms are the same way. So you start out with, like Pete's got some rack equipment in there that's the size of a pizza box. Well, I had those kind of things in my office like 15 years ago. Those have since switched, so the density is a lot smaller. You can stick a blade server in, it's called, that's the size of this thing, that can run 200 or 300 websites, and store terabytes of data in this little thing. So technology is going to change over time, and we don't want to lock ourselves in for 40 years without making sure we're getting a good deal. So what I hope is that people get to understand the deal, because right now there's a lot of people that are in the pile of saying, oh, it's better than nothing, so we must have to take it. Like, we got land sitting there, and these guys are coming to offer, so let's just take this deal. It's the best we can do in Westfield. And I really don't like that attitude. It's not the best we can do in Westfield. It's the best you can do in Westfield without doing any work. Maybe you're lucky. These guys came in. It's like hunting for a whale, right? If you want to hunt for a whale, you have to have a plan of attack, and you have to go out to where the whales are, and you have to learn how to play their game, and eventually you might catch a whale. You don't catch a whale sitting on the dock and waiting for one to flop in your lap. Right. And that's what's happening here. So we're whale hunting, and we got a bass that happened to jump out of the water and flop in our lap, and we're all excited about it. Oh, look at this! We got somebody we can, have pay taxes on that. That's not a good deal for Westfield, and it's not what we should be looking for. We should be much more assertive in this process. We haven't hired an advancement office in the city, for over 2 years, and that's what the role of this person is, to go find these things, to go whale hunting, and we don't have that. And now we're trying to say, oh, it's okay. We just got, a trout flopped in our lap. Let's be happy and celebrate. And that's just not the way we should be doing things.
What would you suggest happen in this situation?
We have to sweeten the deal for sure. This deal, we have 6 minutes, so I can't explain the deal in detail. But the deal basically is these people want tax rate on a commercial building at a rate of an industrial warehouse, and they want that to ramp up about 1% for the next 40 years. These buildings generate much, much more value than a commercial warehouse. And in commercial real estate, the way you determine what your tax load is you figure out the value of the building. And the value of the building is your net profit margin every year divided by what's called a cap rate. And they're somewhere between 7 and 10. So if you're making, say, $10 a year, so let's say you rent the place out for $500 a square foot, you have $490 worth of expenses, you have a $10 profit, you divide that by a cap rate of, say, 10%, that makes a $100 value per square foot for the building times the number of square feet in the building, and that's what your value is. And then you multiply it by our tax factor, which is 36.55 for commercial property, and that's what your tax load is. That's not what they want to do here. Here they want us to lock in $60 a square foot, which is, industrial warehouse type thing. Gotcha. And inside this building, they're making billions of dollars, and truly billions of dollars. I'm not making that up, billions of dollars. And the companies that are making those billions of dollars are some of the richest companies in the world. Companies like Apple and IBM and Amazon Web Services and Microsoft and Google. That's who's in there, and that's who's saying that they can't afford to possibly give us another penny per square foot or $1 per square foot. And that's just not accurate. These places are all over the country. There's several of them inside 495 and 128. We know what the costs are. We know what the tax rates are in these other places in the country. We know what kind of deals they're getting. And we're basically getting screwed here in Westfield because we have an attitude that this is the best we can do in Westfield. Well, it's not. I think we got to step up and get a better deal, and I think we should have our economic development office do that. If these guys don't want to sweeten the pot, then we should do it through our WRA and our economic development office. The WRA can do exactly the same deal these guys are. By the way, these applicants have never built a data center before. These people are in a different business. They're repping somebody behind them that has experience building these things. And these guys have not done it themselves. So we could do the exact same thing through our WRA or through an economic development officer. And maybe get a better deal for Westfield. These guys are not unique. Their unique, supposedly unique value is their ability to get electricity at a cheap price.
Now, that was going to be another question of mine.
Yes.
Yeah. The power draw for one of these plants is incredible.
Yeah. So in this case,
does that benefit G&E at all?
I'll find out tomorrow. So
Okay,
depending which document you read from these people, they say they're going to buy wholesale electricity from Westfield Gas and Electric, which would be a sweet deal. Westfield will get a portion of every kilowatt that goes through there. Other times they're saying no, they're going to tap into the lines that go right above them that are Eversource lines. And Eversource, and they're going to buy through an exchange and have it managed by ISO New England and Eversource. So we don't know what the real story is there.
Interesting.
The other thing to know is the size of this is just massive. So this place at peak load, I thought they were looking at peak in the 200 megawatt range. The document I read yesterday said their peak would be 395 megawatts, which is, for those who don't know, the whole city of Westfield on its highest day ever was 81 megawatts. So this thing is going to be 3 times more than the entire rest of the city.
Well, you kind of want to really push them to use G&E for...
Well, yeah, but that's, say, 45% of their operating costs is related to electricity. So you can't force them to use G&E. It would be really nice for G&E, right?
Yeah, well, but sway them somehow.
But, compare this, the cost of energy in New England compared to down south, right? So Virginia, you're 6 to 8 cents a kilowatt. New England, you're 14 to 18 cents a kilowatt. It's a big difference in price, and if that's 45% of your operating expenses, it's really significant. These guys, in that document I read yesterday, say they claim they can get it under 8 cents. I don't know how they're going to do that in New England. So that's one of the things we have to ask them. Because if they can do it for 8 cents in New England, why the hell is everybody else in New England paying 14 and 18 cents?
Correct.
Right? Big companies that have been around forever, like Pratt & Whitney. You'd think they would
what do they get a break? I need a break.
Right.
Yeah.
So we really have to investigate these issues to find out if this is a real deal, what the flexibility in this is. This 121A thing, by the way, has never been used for industrial projects before. It's a special thing to get this 40 years. It's called 121A. It's always been about housing, and it's through the Department of Housing and Community Development. It's a program to build affordable housing in derelict areas, and that's what this has been used for the lifespan of 121A. When the casinos were built a few years ago, the one in Springfield and Everett, They used 121A as part of their deal to make it a longer-term deal, but there was housing in the mix. This is the first time 121A has been tried to be used for an industrial application. And these guys are bastardizing, can I say that word on TV?
You just did.
Okay, so they're taking this law and breaking apart the pieces that they don't like and excluding them, and then keeping the pieces in this law that they like and that benefit them. So we have to negotiate this thing a little bit better. Again, find out if the deal is real. Everybody show up on Monday, please, or at least follow the meeting. It's going to be recorded. I think Pete's going to be there recording it. We'll have a public hearing. It might be held open to another meeting. We'll see how
We've got 25 seconds. You keep saying meeting tomorrow. What are you talking about?
Monday night, there's a public hearing, 6 o'clock, City Hall. It's a joint meeting between the City Council and the Planning Board. It's a public hearing about this project where the applicant will come in and explain the project and then take questions from the councilors, the Planning Board members, and the citizens. And then at the end of a public hearing, there's usually people that speak for or against particular proposals. In this case, we can have multiple public hearings in a row, and there could be separate public hearings once the matters go to the council and the planning board. There's different topics, like the planning board has to do the site plan, city council has to do the financial.
All right, 6 p.m. tomorrow.
No, Monday.
6 p.m. Monday.
Monday, October 4th.
Excellent. I'm losing track of what day it is.
Yep.
Dave Flaherty, I want to thank you for coming in and spending some time with us.
Great, thank you. Thanks for having me. Reach out to me anytime. Anybody in the audience can reach out to me. I'm on the computers. You see me on the city website, on Facebook, all over the place. And please get out there and vote. There's some very important races in this election, even though there's only a couple of them, but they are very important. People need to show up and vote. They will make a difference in your life for the next several years. Thank you.
All right, Pete.
Thank you.
Live from Studio 120 at Westfield Technical Academy, this is WCPC Channel 15 and 89.5 FM, WSKB Westfield.
Good morning, Westfield. It is 7:03. You're listening to WSKB 89.5 FM radio for the Westfield masses on WCPC Cable Channel 15. My name is Tina Gorman. I'm your Wake Up Wednesday host. And Pete, Rick, and I were over here chuckling over the Bob Plass. Pete and I keep saying it never gets old. It never gets old when he's so excited that he yells out, "I did it!" And there's JPEG Luca in the background, just cracking up because you can imagine how many takes was that, Pete?
It was like his third or fourth or
something.
Yeah,
we had to do that a lot of times. All right, my guest this morning is former mayor and current city councilor at large, Rick Sullivan, and this is the first of my interviews with the candidates. I know Kenny's done a few already. We've done this, every few years. It seems like we just did it yesterday, but clearly not. That was 2 years ago. So, Rick, it's interesting because a lot of the city councilors, most of the city councilors this year are running unopposed. Right. So Kenny and I, usually our format was, we asked the same questions and we gave the same amount of time, and it's a little bit different. So I have some questions that I would like to ask, I think on behalf of our viewers. And then if we have some leftover time, we can kind of take it wherever you would like to take it. But, I want to remind you, Rick was actually mayor when I was hired, almost 16 years ago now.
Yep, just at the tail end.
Yeah, exactly.
Of my reign.
And it was so funny because on my first day of work, so I've often said this, on my first day of work, Ann Heiser, who at that time was my supervisor, Ann took me over to your office to introduce me. And your words of wisdom, now I had never worked in municipal government before, so this was new to me. And you simply said to me, if the seniors are not calling my office about anything, I will know that you are doing your job. And I remember thinking, okay, then that's my task. So I've spent 16 years, Rick, trying to make sure that the seniors don't call the mayor's office, no matter who's in that corner office. It's so funny.
Well, you've done a great job.
Thank you. We're working really hard at that. Every once in a while, we have a few that slip in, and I have a few that threaten. I'm going to call the mayor. All right. So, Rick, for those voters who are new to Westfield, because we do have people that have just moved into the city and don't know you, introduce yourself and provide a bit of educational and professional background.
Sure. So, I've lived in Westfield pretty much all my life, although by old Westfield standards, I would be a carpetbagger because I didn't come here till I was 5. But went through the Westfield public school systems, graduated from Westfield High, Bates College, and West New England Law School. So started a legal practice back in 1984. Did that for about 10 years. was on the city council, actually was first elected to the first elected Gas and Electric Commission.
Okay.
And then ran for city council right after that and lost as a Ward 4 candidate. Actually, Dan Call, good friend.
Okay.
Wasn't necessarily a great friend at the time, but we are very good friends. He lost to Dan, who was the incumbent. Came back a few years later, ran at large, had 4 terms on the 2 terms, 4 years on the city council, was president for 2 of those, and then ran for mayor and served for, almost 7 full terms, was elected 7 full terms, left with 6 months left on my last term to go work for Governor Patrick as the DCR commissioner. Most people around here would know it as the State Parks Agency. Really just a phenomenal opportunity. Not a lot of assets, specifically in Westfield. Hampden Ponds is obviously an important one, and Robinson State Park over the line in Agawam. But it was just a great opportunity, 450,000 acres of parkland. Strangely, people probably wouldn't know it, Massachusetts has the 9th largest state park system in the country.
I have to say, I'm flabbergasted. Yeah. I would have never thought that.
And in terms of acreage, almost all that's in Western Mass. So, Greylock, October Mountain, Bear Mountain. So just some huge, beautiful places, just really unique. But what the governor and lieutenant governor failed to tell me, they really were pumping the state park angle on it. They forgot to tell me that you also have all the parkways in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So I was actually in charge of more roadway than the Massachusetts Turnpike, including a lot of the bridges that the Storrow Drive, the tunnel, and Longfellow Bridge. All those, all those that cross the Charles River. Those were all DC assets. As well as all the dams and dam safety, most of which are in pretty bad condition. And then a lovely thing, the vessel of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, which is the Ernestina, which is a lovely whaling ship from back in the day down in New Bedford. But at the time, it actually didn't float. So, so it was
just a few little details that were left out there.
It was an agency that had really not had a lot of investment in it.
Okay.
And we came in and, really through the leadership of the governor and the legislature, Bob DeLeo was actually chair of Ways and Means at the time, and then obviously became speaker. Huge supporters of the agency. Maybe not at first. Bob DeLeo actually said his political goal the first day I met him. So you just gave your story the first day
and
you met me.
And now it's your turn.
So
Go ahead.
First day I met Bob DeLeo, he was the chair of Ways and Means. He was very cordial, very polite. I did not know him otherwise. And he said, I just want to let you know it is my political life mission to eliminate the agency of DCR because it's the worst agency in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
Okay, then.
But he showed up a year later and spoke in favor at our budget hearing. And he said, I never thought I'd be coming into this hearing and asking for more money for DCR, but they need it, and they've done a really good job in turning.
Well, I have to tell you, that speaks volumes. I think that speaks volumes.
So it was fun. And you know what? It all was the training as the mayor, and that's kind of really how I looked at the job. It was really kind of almost a DPW-like job in that sense. Very customer service orientated. Really touched the lives of just about everybody in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts because we really hold our parks, our open space, our conservation lands very dear. So a lot of committed people, but people knew those, and they were not in the physical shape that they should be. They weren't a real welcoming environment. And so I think we did make some changes. So it was just a really
So how many years were you with DCR?
I was there for 3.5 years. And then at the end of that, the governor said, will you be the Secretary of Energy and Environmental Affairs? And DCR sits within that secretariat. So I was pretty familiar with the environmental agencies. So the Department of DEP, Environmental Protection, Ag was in there. So the Agricultural Agency. Those were pretty familiar to me, but a fishing game, was the fourth one.
Okay.
But I really had very limited energy experience.
Okay.
So we had a great team that was there, and the governor was willing to let there be a little bit of a learning curve. And there was. So, I did 3.5 years as the Secretary of Energy and Environmental Affairs in the governor's cabinet. Had some really just, wonderful opportunities, a lot of international travel with the governor.
Really?
Yeah. We went to, we did China and Japan and Singapore. We did Panama. We did go to England. Brazil. We just did some.
There was a lot of travel there.
We did some, just some really great opportunities, because when the governor went, it was always with a mission of, really building a partnership and showing how, Massachusetts would be a good partner. And we highlighted education, certainly our work around clean energy and energy efficiency, and water. So that is why I got to go, because that was always one of the focuses. So just some really great opportunities there. And then when he was looking to close out his administration, he asked me to come in and be his chief of staff to do the transition to whoever the new governor was. So, we did some pretty that was a really interesting job, because pretty much every issue in the Commonwealth really does cross the desk of the chief of staff. So, we had a really good relationship for those 6 months. It is not a job that I think you can do for a whole lot longer than 6 months, because I think, you need to be there before the governor gets to work in the day, and you got to be there after he leaves, and you got to know the issues, and, it's really a 24/7 job.
Hard to have a life.
Well, it is. And especially with Governor Patrick, because he was up early and out late at meetings, and really wanted to know all the details on all the issues. So, but just a wonderful opportunity that I've really been able to have. And then came back. I now am president of the Economic Development Council in Western Massachusetts, really focused on economic development issues, mostly in the 3 counties of Hampden, Hampshire, and Franklin counties. So looking to attract businesses, grow businesses. We've got a couple initiatives now where we're really looking to have our bigger companies, our anchors, as we call them, hire local, source local. So their supply chains, work with other companies. We do have a real emphasis on having those companies and those employees be diverse. So minority owned and women owned businesses, others that have not necessarily, been able to take part in the economy at any time, and there's a lot of barriers to that. And they need some help. They need some technical assistance to be able to grow, some business assistance. And, the companies in Western Massachusetts, my membership, which is, we're primarily a membership-based organization, is really committed to helping grow the economy for everybody here in Western Mass. So came back. I've been here now, it seems crazy, but I'm going to be finishing up my 7th year.
Really?
Yeah. So So I was the
years are flying.
I was the last guy to leave the Patrick administration in the State House and handed. Well, they say exchange the keys, although of course there's no keys anymore.
Right.
But, exchange the keys with the Baker administration. So I was literally the last guy out. And then just really walked into the EDC. So
Rick, so if you're just joining us, my guest this morning is at-large City Councilor Rick Sullivan, who's running for a second term now, but this will actually be like your 4th or 5th term on council?
It actually will be the 4th.
The 4th.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So let's go back to what initially you were a young lawyer, this young buck, and why did you run? You said by your own admission you lost the first Ward 4 contest, but why? Because that really started that whole started your public life. So why get into running for city council? Well, initially, and then I'm going to bring you back to that was then, this is now, why do it again? But what was the impetus for that?
So my wife, Lisa, had lived in Westfield, all her life. We'd gone through the school system. We, had gotten married. Decided we were going to live in Westfield and raise our family. And our, kids were very young, really just starting the family. And education and support of education was something that we thought was really important. And, we looked around and really felt like there were not even some of the same choices that we had when we were students matriculating through the system. There weren't, class sizes were, big. It didn't seem like there was the support for the teachers in terms of the resources that they needed to do their jobs and really be looked at as the professionals that they are. We had gotten an extremely good education through the Westfield public school system, which, by the way, our kids did as well. And, kind of could hear my mom in the background saying, if you're not going to, step up and volunteer to make the changes, then you really don't have any right to complain about it or, or do something about it yourself. So, felt that, certainly education was kind of always the driver in the desire to serve.
Okay.
And, while the council does not necessarily set the school policies, I do think it's important that there's supporters on the city council that support the financial investments that we're making, in all of our departments. But, certainly the schools was a big driver for me. So, I have been always hugely fortunate that, Lisa and the family and even the extended family have been really supportive because, as we were talking about it before, there's a lot of slings and arrows in public life. There's a lot of time out of the house. There's a lot of meetings. There's a lot of commitments. And quite honestly, if you're going to do the job and do the job right, you have to be out. You have to be meeting people. You have to meet them where they are and have those conversations and get to know people and get to know the issues and put the time in. And that means, something gives on the other side.
That's
and
right.
so, no one can do this job and be successful at it if they don't have a good support system. So I've always been really, really lucky that way. And
then, Rick, when you opted to run for mayor, what were your thoughts about that?
Yeah, so there was, there was definitely at the time, I think, a feeling, and George Varelis was the mayor, and for a brief moment in time, we were actually running against each other.
Okay.
He did withdraw, kind of unexpectedly, actually at the Westfield High School graduation, he announced it.
Wow. Okay.
So it was really education. I think the administration at the time really felt like, well, as long as the buses are running and the doors are open and the school bell rings, everything's fine. And, I just had a very different, I thought it was much more important of what happened on the other side of those walls, what the classrooms were like, what the resources were. And, also, an economic development was certainly an issue in terms of, I think Westfield is just a great community and has a really lot to offer, certainly geographically, but resource-wise. It's a great place to live, but it's a great place to work and have your business and grow here. And it's just a very close-knit, I think, community and didn't really see that there was really anything that was marketing the city or really being kind of proactive or really having a vision. And I think that that's important, particularly with whoever's sitting in the mayor's job, is that there needs to be a vision of where you want to take the city. So, we started, we did the Great River Bridge project in the green and I can remember Mark Crisati, who's still here as the city engineer, and he does a phenomenal job, by the way, and just a really committed Westfield person. And, that shouldn't be lost. He's a great engineer, but he's a Westfield person, and that's a lot of what he does comes from that perspective of, wanting to leave Westfield better. So Mark and Jimmy Boardman was the community development director. Still talk to Jimmy a lot. And they walked in pretty much on day one and said, look, we've got this idea about a bridge. I said, yeah, that idea's been around for 50 years and nothing's happened. And they said, well, we think if we actually start planning, it'll happen. But they said, you will not, you got to understand, you're not going to be the guy who, puts the shovel in the ground or cuts the ribbon or drives the first car over it. Because it's a long-term slog. So I said, look, let's go. So, they designed it, all the professional engineers, they did their work. And I remember Mark Crisati coming in and he goes, if this all happens at the same time, the entire city of Westfield is going to be under construction. And I said, Mark, this is 3 or 4 projects, most likely. I said, when are we ever going to get all of this money? But then you had President Obama and those dollars, and all of a sudden we were shovel ready. We were ready to go.
That was it.
It's why we have the Columbia Greenway was part of that project. I mean, we actually bought the railway because it was cheaper to buy that so that they didn't have to spend $1 million to do a diamond change up on the CSX line. Purchase the church, so we did the whole visioning and construction of the Greenway, of the Columbia Greenway. Then Mark said, well, we got a gaslight district, and so that got designed, and we started the neighborhood street replacements with the concrete sidewalks, not black macadam. If we're going to do them, let's do them, first class. And so, we started to do those things. We started to make some investments. We, did the middle school, the North Middle, and had to do an equal rebuild on the south side. So we, improved the airport, with a new terminal building. Oh, by the way, the last thing I actually got to do as mayor was to do the groundbreaking for the Great River Bridge project.
Yes,
Governor Patrick drove out, and we did it together.
Remember.
And then that was my last official act. So, but they certainly never thought I was going to be hanging around for 13 and a half years.
I think it's really important, Rick, and I'm really glad that you pointed out, because I was around when it was like, okay, shovel ready stuff. And, so people were pulling things out of the, going, okay, this is ready. But all that preliminary work, that didn't just happen overnight. That was a lot of planning. So I'm glad that you reminded our viewers that was when you were in office, because I think you're right. You do have to have that vision. I think anybody in a leadership role has to be looking at, okay, here's where we are now, but where should we be in 5 years? Where should we be in 10 years? And so you were served as mayor for a number of years and, did all your stuff with the state. 2 years ago, you came back and decided to get back on the city council, which is, kind of where all this started. What drove you to that decision, Rick?
I just think it was kind of the tenor of the conversation that was happening, at the city council level.
Okay.
I don't think it was really constructive. I think, looking at it from an outside point of view, from, attracting businesses and, for people who don't necessarily think that, business pay attention to how the conversations happened at school committees or city councils or planning board, is there, are you business friendly in the sense that, we can come in and make a presentation and be treated professionally. And I just quite honestly didn't think that was happening. And, I really care a lot about this community. It's been very good to me, to my family. And I really just thought that a lot of the discussion was really unprofessional, unproductive. So, I said again,
mom's voice in the background okay.
Mom's still saying,
if you don't like it,
you can be angry and mad and everything else, but unless you're going to, at least try to change it. So let's talk about that. So you've served, you're finishing up the second year on council. And do you feel that you have been somewhat successful in, meeting some of those goals? I do. I think it's a very committed, group of individuals, so the 13, we certainly do not agree on everything, which wasn't the point.
Right.
It's not that everybody needs to agree. It's just how does business get conducted.
Yep.
And, so I think that has happened. I mean, certainly everybody this last, year, 2 years has dealt with a lot of different circumstances in terms of the COVID and everything else. And, I don't know that it's the same camaraderie that was necessarily there the first time I was there. You don't have the Angie Holmeses and the Barbara Swordses and, Lenny Burlingames and I'm probably the only one that remembers a lot of those older names.
No, my senior listeners know a lot of those names as well.
But a lot of those people were just really civic minded individuals who being on the city council really mattered, and there was just a high level of professionalism. I mean, I remember my first meeting, I got yelled at in the hallway by Angie Holmes of all people, and I was like, I had no idea why she was mad at me. And she's like, you called me Counselor Holmes. And she goes, we don't use names because otherwise it gets personal. So it was always the counselor across the way or the counselor to my left or to my right. You never, I mean, that's how much decorum there was.
Okay.
And, now that same level isn't here today, but there is a level of respect, everybody's counselor being president being. But, everybody has that level of professional,ism, I think.
Yep.
And I think, I do think, for the most part, I think everybody has really, I think we reflect, well on the city.
Yeah, I agree. And so now you're running again. So let's talk a little bit about why you're doing that and what do you hope to accomplish over the next couple of years? We've got about 4 minutes left.
Okay, geez, I took up all the other time just talking about nothing. So.
No, but I disagree. I think that it's really helpful. Honestly, for as many years as I've known you, you had a lot of information in there that I didn't know. And I think that has kind of helped all of us, viewers and listeners, to kind of get a better perspective on where you're coming from. So
one of the things that I would really like to see happen, and probably one of the frustrations I've had, is I really think the downtown just needs a catalyst.
Yeah.
And I really think that once something, somewhat significant happens, that'll be enough to really start just a catalytic effect, and really start seeing some private investment in the downtown. I think it's pretty exciting that you've got a couple of, new shops that have opened up that are, I'll call them boutique-y.
Yep.
The coffee shop seems to be doing really well. It is too bad, certainly well earned, but too bad that Leo's, retired.
Yeah.
Really an anchor down there through all the good times and bad.
Yeah.
So I do miss going in there.
Yeah. Same.
But I just think the infrastructure is there, and the community, I think, is really ready to support an investment down there. I'd love to see some restaurant opportunities. I'd like to see an economic development, community development strategy, and I know they're working hard. PJ does a great job, but that would certainly like to be something.
Okay.
And I mean, I think that some of the other longer term financial things, I do think that there has to be a serious look about how retirement plans and things work. Not anybody that is currently in the system.
Yep.
But moving forward, because there are a couple of the only one that has the type of retirement plan that we've got is really government these days. I mean, private industry has gotten rid of that kind of a plan. And so, I just think that there's other opportunities and some of the longer range things that we ought to be looking for the future. But, I think overall, financially the city is in a good position. There's been a lot of good work that's been done, across administrations, in getting us to where we are. So, I think from a financial footing, I think we're in very good position to move forward. So I do think that, there can be investments made that would look to attract, some of those smaller Main Street, or in our case, Elm Street businesses, to really open up and really just bring some life there. And I know we've talked about it forever. It certainly was even talked about during all my administrations, and we never quite got it there. But I'm really optimistic that something could happen there.
Perfect. That's a great way to end. And, I will remind you, since you said they had also talked about the Great River Bridge for, what did you say, 50 years before you got there, Rick? And, you helped to bring that over the finish line. So I have no doubt. City Councilor at Large, Rick Sullivan, running again. And election November 2nd?
Yeah.
Do I have that right?
Okay. It's the first Tuesday.
Get out and vote.
Who's after me? Do we have Councilor Matthews
do.
Kane?
Bridget Matthews Kane is coming in.
The hardest working city councilor.
So here we go. We're going from somebody with so much experience to somebody who just served her first. So we'll do a little basis of comparison.
You would never know it.
Thank you so much. We will be back. All right.
Live from Studio 120 at Westfield Technical Academy, this is WCPC Channel 15 and 89.5 FM, WSKB Westfield.
Good morning, Westfield. It is 7:33. You're listening to WSKB 89.5 FM radio for the Westfield masses on WCPC cable channel 15. My name is Tina Gorman. I am your Wake Up Wednesday host. I am in the studio this morning with the chairman of the board, Pete Coles. Pete, are you waking up over there? It was a very long planning board meeting last night.
Very long week.
Very long week.
Yes.
And, you know, Pete, one of the things we didn't talk about, because we still have 1 minute before I can bring Councillor Matthews-Kane on. Do we have any meeting? Do you have any meetings tonight?
I have a 1 o'clock meeting, which is Healthcare Trust. I have a 5 o'clock school building committee, and I have a 7 o'clock ZPD meeting.
Zoning, right?
Yeah, all on Zoom.
Okay. All Zooming. Okay. So
I'll see Bridget for 2 of them, I believe.
So stay tuned. So my guest for this section of this portion of the show is City Councilor Bridget Matthews-Kane, Ward 3 City Councilor Bridget Matthews-Kane. As Councilor Sullivan was on a few minutes ago, and Bridget, you're running unopposed. So this is just a great opportunity for us to just kind of relax and just have a chat about, you know, why you're running, what you've done. I have all kinds of questions, but I'm going to pose the same question to you. Now, Rick, I posed this question to Rick and it took literally like half the time, which is absolutely fine. But, you know, we do have some folks that have just moved to Westfield. Some people who don't really know, you know, kind of who you are and who the members of the council are. So give us a little bit of, you know, just introduce yourself, give us a little bit of background on, you know, where you grew up, your educational background, your professional background. And then we'll kind of swing into, you know, why you ran for city council and what you hope to accomplish and all those kinds of good things. But just tell us who you are. Who are you? I don't know. Just tell us.
Well,
I know a little, but not a lot.
Okay. So first, before I start on that, I just really want to thank you for having me in the studio. It's a great chance to connect with the voters and to just get my story out. And it's nice to chat with you.
Perfect.
So.
All right. We're going to be BFFs by the time this is over, Bridget.
Excellent.
Okay.
So you asked about my background. Yeah. So I'm a native of Westfield. I was born at Noble Hospital.
You were?
I was actually.
So that's when they still had a maternity ward.
They had so there's only a certain generation of people who were actually born there. But I was born at Noble Hospital.
Well, you can really say you're a native. You're not a carpetbagger like Rick said he was. He moved here when he was 5. So you were born at Noble Hospital, not Bay State Noble. Yep. It was Noble Hospital.
I was born at Noble Hospital. Okay. My young years, I was on Holland Avenue, which is the street across from the Boys and Girls Library. Yep. My family moved to Court Street when I was in 2nd grade. So I've lived in Ward 3 almost my whole time in Westfield.
Wow.
I went to St. Mary's Elementary School.
Yeah.
And then I switched over to Westfield High School and graduated from there. And then I went off to Boston College for undergrad.
Nice. And what did you study?
I was an English major.
Okay.
So I started pre-med, actually, but I ended up, that's my love was English. So I switched over to that.
Okay.
And at that point, I kind of moved away from Westfield. Like I came back after my sophomore year of college, but junior year moving forward, I didn't come back during the summers, and I ended up moving all over the place. I was on the Cape, I was in Boston, I was in Worcester, I was in Philadelphia. Later on, I was outside of Washington, D.C. I lived for a year in Dublin. I lived for 3 months in Beijing. I just really moved all over the place.
Okay.
So I really have lived in a lot of other places.
So when you were moving to all those places, was that job-related, relationship-related, or just I want to see the world related?
Well, I want to see the world and education and jobs. It was a mixture of all of them. So like when I was in Dublin, I was getting my master's at University College Dublin.
Okay.
When I was in Philadelphia, I was doing a year of volunteer service with a Catholic organization. The others were my jobs in the Boston area and Worcester, and then for a while, my husband, he's a Marine Corps reservist.
Okay.
And he was stationed down in Quantico, Virginia. And so we had a young daughter at that point, and we moved down there for it was a little over a year.
Okay.
So it just gave me an opportunity to see lots of different parts of the world.
And it also gives you an opportunity to have a different perspective, you know, because when you travel away, and especially out of country, and live in another country for a while, it just adds a whole different perspective, I think, when you come back, I'm guessing.
Yes, and I think that's a strength that I bring to council, is that
absolutely.
I've lived in all these different places, and I can see different ways that things can be done.
Yeah.
And so many things that we do in town are so great, but there are, you know, other ways we could approach
Absolutely.
issues.
I mean, it's kind of thinking outside of the box. And sometimes when we in the directors of the councils on aging will often say when you hire somebody new, you have fresh eyes and they look at something very differently than the way we did. And, and that's a good thing. It's kind of like, oh, well, I never really thought about that. Okay, well, wait a minute. Maybe we're not doing this the best way we could. So I think that's great. Yeah. All right. And so, but you somehow circled back to Westfield. How long have you been back in Westfield?
So I think I'm losing track at this point, but I think it's around 15 years.
Okay.
So I had worked in education after I graduated from college. I started off in basic adult education, which is I did workplace education and GED and ESL. And I found myself really loving teaching and really enjoying teaching that age group. But the subject matter I was starting to get a little bored with. So I went back and I earned my PhD in English. And I started teaching at the college level. I taught for, while I was working on my PhD, I taught at UMass Amherst.
And where did you get your doctorate?
At UMass.
At UMass, okay.
Yes, and then I taught for a decade at Westfield State. And you had asked, why Westfield? So I'm actually married to my high school sweetheart.
So am I. So we have that in common.
I didn't know that.
There it is.
Yes. So, and we did really enjoy moving all over the place and seeing different parts of the world. But then when we had our first child, and she was a year old, 2 years old, and we started thinking, okay, we probably can't keep traveling.
It's also helpful to have family around when you've got young children that can kind of help out.
And I'm very close to my family. And I have a real extended family here in Western Massachusetts. So we were, saying, what are we going to do next? And we said, well, why don't we try Westfield? And we're thrilled that we moved back. We're really happy with that decision. We think it's a great community to live in, to raise a family in. Yeah. We're really happy here.
And so, were you teaching in the English department at Westfield State?
I was.
I assume.
Yes, I was. Okay. I was. And I taught exclusively, I taught composition, which is the freshman writing class. So
yes.
It's
the one that everyone has to get through. I personally loved it. I love to write, but I know a lot of students, okay, just got to get through this. Yeah. English 101.
Yes, that's what I taught. And it was a great class to teach. And I was always really heartened to see how much they would improve in the course of a semester. You're taking them from here's a basic 5-paragraph essay, which they're very comfortable and happy with. And you say, actually, you can't write those anymore now that you're in college.
Not going to happen.
And you have to teach them how to do it.
I think the other thing, too, Bridget, at teaching, first-year students is that this is also a new experience for them. For a lot of them, first time away from home. Some of them maybe not so local. So if they're from the eastern part of the state, and it is because I taught at Springfield College for a dozen years before I took the job here.
Oh, I didn't know
and
that.
And it's that whole sort of adjustment period, and so you are an instructor, a professor, a teacher, but you're also a bit of a counselor, and
Well, I did think of myself that way because some of them are really struggling with the transition, and you have to approach it that way.
Yeah.
Especially with the Westfield State students. So I loved them, though. I actually really miss being in the classroom.
So you're not teaching now?
I am not teaching.
Are you working outside of the home at all, other than the city council thing?
I'm doing city council.
Yeah.
And we have 4 children.
Oh, good Lord. Okay. Well, that is working.
And they are keeping me very busy.
Now, what's the span? Youngest, oldest?
So I have
Where are we?
A junior in college.
Okay.
I have a senior in high school at St. Mary's.
Okay.
I have a sophomore at Westfield High. And I have a 6th grader at the intermediate school.
So not only do you have 2 high schoolers, you've got them in different schools.
Yes.
So not necessarily on exactly the same schedules. Okay.
So now we know.
Yeah, we know.
And my husband he's a 8th grade social studies teacher. He's also a Marine Corps reservist.
Yep.
And he's frequently getting activated or on orders, or he hasn't deployed in a while, thank God. But it's very challenging with the 4 kids and his unstable schedule. Yeah. I guess I'll leave it at that. So right now I'm doing city council.
Which is really awesome that you kind of have a little bit of flexibility, if there is such a thing as flexibility when you're a mom to 4 kids. So let's get into my next question for you, which would be, so 2 years ago, you decided to run for Ward 3 city councilor. And I had asked, Councilor Sullivan the same question, but what was the impetus for you to do that, Bridget? I mean, you kind of had this, I have this life, I have things under control. Why jump into this? And what were what were your thoughts?
So there usually is a story like why you decide to do this, because this isn't something I had been thinking about or anticipated. But I live on Court Street. I live right near Noble Hospital. And at that point there was they wanted to rezone the area around the hospital.
I recall.
You recall. So as a neighbor, I had concerns about the way it was being structured. And I wanted to make sure the neighborhood could maintain a say while the hospital would still have room to grow. And I was really looking for that middle ground where they could grow and improve, but yet the neighborhood would be protected. And trying to find that sweet spot. And I became really involved in that. And there was a neighborhood group. We had a petition. I was spearheading a lot of that. And a lot of people would come up to me and say, oh, wow, you should run for council. And at first I thought, oh, no. And then I started thinking about it. And I thought, yeah, it plays to a lot of my strengths. You know, my love of Westfield, my academic background I find really helpful. I know a lot about the community, and I have a lot of ideas from the other areas that I've lived. So I decided to plunge in, and I'm really happy.
So let's talk about, because you decided to run for Ward 3 as opposed to at large. So can you tell us a little bit about that decision? Because you could have run for at large.
I could have,
if you had chosen to do that. Obviously, you've lived in Ward 3 for a lot of your life. I mean, you know, minus the travel time, but growing up and so forth. But what was your thought process on that one?
You know, I just love that section of the city. I just have this real connection with it. You know, growing up on Holland Avenue, growing up on Court Street, seeing how it's changed over the years. It's a really wonderful place to live in our community, and I just really want to fight to keep it that way. And I really have the energy and drive. I think because there's a lot of constituent issues, and you really have to keep your eye on the ward and know the pulse of the ward and know what's going on. And I felt like that was where I wanted to pour my energies into. And
so what would you say from a residential standpoint? Because I think a lot of people think of Ward 3 as, you know, sort of the business ward. You know, it's kind of like the downtown area.
It is half of the downtown area.
So talk to us a little bit about your constituents, about the residents who live there. What do you have in Ward 3? Because I have to be quite honest with you and say I sometimes get the boundaries a little confused on who's where. I pretty much know Ward 2, like especially the senior housing, but what's in Ward 3 residentially? Like where? Give us some parameters, streetwise.
So it is hard to describe it. And we're looking at changing the boundaries, but currently it's one half of downtown, you know, the half that the Athenaeum and Mama Cakes are on. And then it just kind of sweeps up towards Stanley Park. But I do have like a little bit of a tail that goes up along Russell Road along the river. All the way to the border. So it's like Cocoa Country
I was going to ask, like Franklin Street, where is that? So that's Ward 2.
No, that's Ward 3.
Oh, that's Ward 3. I mean,
yes,
that's
Ward 3. But Franklin Avenue continues all the way up to Russell, and I actually have
so
that
you have
whole
some of that
segment. So it's a real mix. In fact, I was amazed to learn that I have industrial A, I have rural residential, I have residential areas. It's a real mix of different types of parts of our city.
It is, and I imagine, Bridget, that you have, you've got businesses that are saying this is what we need, and you've got residents that are saying this is, and of course, I'm lumping residents. They're not all the same. I mean, you have single dwelling homes, you have apartments in that area. You have, I'm guessing, you've got a real mixed bag, and I'm also thinking probably some. A diverse population, not just in terms of age, but in terms of culture and nationality and so forth.
Yes,
so
it is definitely one of the more diverse.
Yeah,
but it's one of the things I enjoy about it.
Yeah,
I think there's real energy to that.
Yes,
and and ultimately, despite the differences through the ward, a lot of people's concerns are the same. It's their quality of life. They might have different issues, but they just really want to make sure it's a livable community, that their needs are addressed. And for them, for the most part, I have been able to finagle a way to get them what they're looking for. Maybe not 100%. And not for every single issue. There's so many different things going on and so many things in play. But, I do get lots of requests, and that's what a big part of what you're doing as a ward counselor is people are reaching out and they have a concern, like they have an unpaved road they needed graded, or they need a permit and they're not sure where to turn, or they have an issue, their neighbor's grass is too high, or they just need their street to be snowplowed better. So a lot of time I'm fielding those
So
concerns.
if I'm a resident or a business living in Ward 3, how would I get how do people know how to get a hold of you?
So people reach out to me a bunch of different ways.
Yeah, how do they do that?
So you can go on my city email. It's listed on the city website. Yep. So a big chunk of people reach out to me that way.
Okay.
You can call me. My phone number's also on the city website, but people hesitate to do that. Yeah. And then I do get a lot of requests on my Facebook page. I have a really active Facebook page, my city council Facebook page, and a lot of people message me on that.
Okay.
And sometimes I'll try to ask them, especially if it starts getting complicated, I switch them over to email. Yeah. But that's a way that a lot of people in Westfield are comfortable reaching out, and I'm happy to hear their concerns that way as well.
So I'm going to, this is so different than I was just interviewing Councillor Sullivan. I am now interviewing Councillor Matthews-Kane, and you came on to the city council 2 years ago, and you both have very different backgrounds and experiences politically. So this was really your first time on city council and serving. What was that like as, sort of like your rookie experience? What was that like?
Well, sometimes when I try and explain it to my friends, I talk about it's like driving a car. When you're younger and you're sitting in the car and your parents are driving, you just think, oh, this looks easy.
I know. I can do this. Yeah.
But then you actually get in the driver's seat and you have a stick shift and you have the steering wheel and there's all these buttons to press and then there's all the other cars around you and you don't know what they're doing.
This is really funny, but I remember the first time I was in driver's ed in high school and I started the car and I turned the ignition and I jumped, as if like, oh my God, now what do I do? So I can appreciate what you're saying. It's like, it looks pretty easy.
It looks pretty easy, but
when you're watching those counselors on TV.
Yeah. So there's a lot. There's a lot of content that you have to learn, but there's a lot of procedure as well, like who speaks when, why are they speaking in that order, and why. So it took but I want to say everyone's been incredibly gracious, in mentoring me and explaining things to me, or. If I ask a question, they'll explain it, but they'll often just initiate an explanation. And I'm very grateful. Everyone on council has been lovely.
So you feel like the folks that have been the more seasoned, veterans on council have kind of helped to lead the way just in terms of, I'm right there with you. That whole procedural thing, and first vote and second reading, and now it goes to a committee and, can be confusing.
Yeah. And I'm really grateful because I was given a lot of opportunities. I've actually served on a lot of committees for my first 2 years. So I'm the liaison to the Athenaeum and off-street parking because those are in downtown. They're in my ward for the most part. Yeah. But I'm on the Franklin Avenue School Building Committee because it's going to be built in my ward. Yep. Knock on wood. Yep. Hopefully.
Yep. We'll get there.
It's not a done deal, but hopefully. I was on the Auditor Search Committee when we hired the new auditor, so I learned a lot. And I've served on ZPD, license, long-range finance, and then this year I've been serving on finance, which has been a great opportunity because it's a very active, busy committee.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. We touch most things that
we
come
know
through
that.
council, and I've been serving with Councillor Sullivan and Councillor Figge, and they've been really gracious, teaching me the ropes.
Good.
I'm thankful for that.
Great. So what were talk a little bit about what some of the pandemic challenges have been, because that's, it's like, here you are, new to the city council, 2 months into it, boom.
Because I'm still learning how to drive the car.
Yeah,
and now I have to drive it through a pandemic.
Exactly. Now you're driving it through like through a storm.
I mean, it was really challenging because it seemed like things were changing on a daily basis. It was making sure that we had all the information, so we listened in on a lot of state calls where they were trying to explain what the situation was and what the response should be. Yep. And I often, I think all of us were trying to find ways to serve the community. I remember I was talking with you. I was helping the mask makers of Westfield get their masks out to needy groups. in my ward, and I dropped some off at the senior center, just trying to make sure that those basic needs were met. You know, that the food pantry was able to deliver food to people who couldn't get out, and just those basic needs at the beginning. But one thing that I did that I wasn't expecting was I did have a Facebook page, and I had a fairly active following on that. But then during the pandemic, information was changing. It felt like every day, and there was so much important information to get out, and I really started pushing a lot of information out on my Facebook page. And so every time I'd bump into people, they would thank me. They told me they found my information really helpful. They really liked following it, so they would get updates. And, of course, the more compliments I would get on it, the more time I would spend on it.
Sure.
And I was really able to get out information. My favorite story about Facebook, and again, this wasn't part of my plan. I was just trying to respond to the situation, was one of the businesses in my ward is Aloe Saigon. And one thing, I walk a lot and I jog a lot. And since I've taken office, I only walk and jog through Ward 3 because I just want to keep an eye on everything. And I saw Aloe Saigon had a sign up that they had closed for the pandemic and they were going to reopen. So I could snap a picture. I could share it on Facebook. And, you know, 3,000 people saw the post and 550 people actually interacted with it. So that way when they opened, people knew. Because otherwise the word wouldn't have come out as much. So I just really want to...
Well, it wouldn't have come out as quickly, that's for sure.
And I wanted to amplify the fact that they were opening. And so that's just one small example of
That's a great example, though, Bridget. I think that's a great example of, you know, how you're... And I love that, because I also run, but I love that you're kind of doing that within Ward 3 to kind of keep an eye on things. And I know when Brian Hoos was Ward 3 counselor, he did a lot of walking with the dog. But it was the same thing. You know, that's how he connected with people, you know, in that area, and he was visible. And I think if you're visible, so that not just so that you're knowing them, but so that they're knowing you.
Yes. And I am trying to do that. And one of the things I wanted to talk about was, I've really tried hard to pinpoint issues and get them fixed before people even complain to me about them. So when I jog, I have my phone with me, and there's an app called See, Click, Fix, and you can just report an issue. So I'll be jogging down the street, and there's a pothole, and I just stop. I take a picture. I report it. So I actually haven't had anyone reach out to me about potholes in the ward, and I think part of it is that the streets are in such good shape now. But if I see something, I'm instantly reporting it. And my favorite example of that is I knew that the tree planting program was going to come in. And there were a lot of stumps in my ward. And I decided I'm going to tag every single one. So I was able to tag 58 stumps. And then DPW once they were identified, DPW did a great job removing them. We had about 50 of them removed, which it's a safety issue.
Absolutely.
It's a visual. It doesn't look great when there's a stump there. And it will allow us to plant the trees. For this greening the Gateway
And I
Cities
heard all
program.
about the tree planting from Councillor Figge, who was all enthusiastic about this. Thought this was just, just great, which it is. I mean, I think it is great.
It's almost a perfect program. It's state funded, so it's not city dollars. They're going to plant 2,400 trees in our downtown areas, which is the areas that need it the most. And talking about growing up in Westfield, when I was on Holland Avenue as a little kid, there were these huge trees. There was this beautiful canopy of trees, and it was beautiful. It cooled the neighborhood. It increased the values of the homes. And some of those streets, they've lost all of their trees at this point. And this is a great opportunity for us to replant them. And people can ask for them. They can have a say in what type of trees planted. They can have a say in the location. You know, you do have to negotiate with the urban forester about, what she thinks is going to work and what you would like. But it's just terrific. And Councilor Figge and I have a very friendly competition going to see who can plant the most trees.
There it is.
Yeah, it's just to make it a little fun.
Perfect.
You know? So, if we're going to tally them up at the end of the season and see
who won.
Who won.
All right, so we have a couple of minutes left. You're running again.
Yes.
So clearly this is something that has worked for you, or you are not finished yet. That's how I always look at it. It's like, I'm not done yet, so I'm not going anywhere yet. So you got about 2 minutes here. What do you hope to accomplish this term? Are there any big things that you're looking at?
So I do. I don't want to give the specific ideas away, but there's 3 themes that I would like to try and hit on. Safety is a big one for me.
Okay.
There are ways we could improve pedestrian and bike safety in our city. I'd like to push for that.
All right.
I would like to push on environmental issues. I've been really trying to lead some of the arguments about what we should do on those issues, and I do have some specific ideas.
Well, and I think the tree thing kind of dovetails
it
into.
does.
I didn't bring that up, but I thought, well, from an environmental standpoint, so we got safety, we have environment. What's your third one?
And I would like to preserve some of the historic character of our neighborhoods as well, and I do have a few ideas for that. So those are the three. You know, because when you're on council, often you're responding to like larger issues that come in front. But those are three things that I would personally like to try and push for, and I do have some specific ideas. So
that's perfect.
You'll get to see me next.
That's perfect. And thank you so much for coming on and just learn. It's so that we could learn about you. I love doing this because clearly for you because you're newer to the council, so I don't know you. But even with with Councilor Sullivan when he was on, I mean, he was like, well, I didn't know half of his background. I mean, I kind of knew little snippets, but it's really helpful. And as you said, I think, you're bringing that perspective of having lived outside of Westfield and especially in other countries, just bringing a whole different perspective. And so thank you on behalf of your constituents in Ward 3, but also for the city for serving on the council. Because, Pete and I have often said, if you think that there's an issue, and certainly if you think that you have strengths that you're bringing to the table, and you do, to bring them to the table and to serve, your community is just, to me, it's just the best. That's just a win-win for everybody. So, Ward 3 Councilor Bridget Matthews-Kane, thank you. Good luck. We know we have a lot of people running unopposed, and I'm particularly grateful for the councilors that have taken the opportunity to come on because you are unopposed. You don't really have to, but thank you for just for enlightening us.
Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
You're very welcome. All right, it is 8:00. You are listening to WSKB 89.
And I want to say to the control room that's the exact bump I was looking for. And it looks like I moved the camera just enough to get the correct look here. So good morning, Kristen.
How are you?
Good. So Kristen has her mask on because she always wears one, and we want to bump Mike 1 up just a tad, so to make her voice a little more powerful.
Oh, well, thank you very much.
All right, see how I can make that happen?
Oh, look at that.
No problem now,
Can
right?
we do this at council?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
The nights that I am there running the video on those meetings, there's so many times I just want to get up out of my little closet there and run into council chambers and move that microphone right in front of people. But I was told, you know what? People have to be smart enough to talk into the mic, and you're not going to be running back and forth 25 times trying to move that microphone. So
we do try to remind people to please speak in the mic.
I do chase the levels up in the closet. So I like Cindy. I need to turn her up because she's a little soft spoken with the microphone. But once I find her level, it's good because she stays there and she talks into the darn thing.
Right.
Yeah.
I'll work on that. I'll do my best.
But we got a good level on you. People probably heard me earlier. I don't know if you're listening or not. Pete decided, even though everyone except for Ward 1 is uncontested, even though we're in that situation, we're going to still have these people come in and make them accountable. We're going to hear from, the people who we elect to represent us because, we can't have taxation without representation.
That's right, and that representation needs to be accurate. So.
And that representation is you.
It turns out, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, Kristen.
I know. Well, the thing is, my mother always told me to be careful, like proving that you could do something because then you'd end up with a job. And so doing it. So once I started advocating for the residents, they were like, yeah, okay, you can do that some more. And then boom, here we are.
Yeah, that's happened with me. I come up with a solution to a problem, and now, okay, well, Kenny can figure things out.
Oh, now you have to, yeah.
Well, let's go to Kenny for this. Let's go to Kenny. So, I still know a lot of tricks that I am not letting out of my bag.
Well, I personally appreciate the fact that you are helpful in that way because whether with City Council or, the Pride Alliance or RAFT, you have come through for us several times. So we appreciate that.
all we ask is for people to contact us and say, hey, look, we have something that, we'd like to have recorded. If you have time or personnel, can you come by here and shoot this? No, nobody contacts us. There was this great thing at the old burial grounds the other day with stone restoration, and I'm like, that would have made a great documentary for us to film.
It would, but I do have to say that some of the people giving demonstrations don't want to be recorded because they want to do it themselves.
So you don't record them. There's
I don't
trickery.
know about that, man, but I know we've had people before in the old burial grounds doing the cleaning, and they choose not to have that information out. They want to do it themselves.
Well, I know that the grave marker guy. Who am I thinking of? Gene, yeah, Gene. Yeah,
yeah, he doesn't.
He all I need is him to fill up a video on that.
Right. Some of the people who do it professionally, that's how they earn their living.
Yeah.
So if you put those things online, it cuts into some of their revenue too.
Yeah. No, I'm not
saying this. The man that we had, and off the top of my head, I can't think of his name, but he was wonderful. I mean, he was fixing stones, Christian, that had been knocked over or broken or cracked, and you would think there's nothing you can do. And when he got done, I couldn't even see the crack.
It's amazing. It really is.
It was wonderful, really wonderful.
So we almost got there, but then we went in another direction.
So
What made you run for city council?
Someone went and took out papers and got signatures for both mayor and city council at the time.
I remember that.
And then said, look, all these people want you to run, will you do it? And I was like, oh God, I didn't want to, but if all those people thought that they needed this voice there, I was like, okay, let's try. And then,
and then you ended up being the surprise winner at the tail end there, ousting sitting people.
That was not
the intention,
and it wasn't even in my. I didn't think that could happen.
Yeah.
So that was new, and but I tried very hard to hit the ground running. I had no idea that would happen. But I am humbled and honored by the fact that so many people in this town thought, that we want her to speak for us. And previously, I was just speaking because nobody else was. We have a right to clean air and water, and nobody was talking about it. Mary Ann Babinski was, but she was on council, so there's a little bit of restraint that, as a counselor you have to have when you're working as a counselor. But as a resident and a chemist, I was, no holds barred. And so I expected that someone else would have been speaking, and when nobody was, I didn't want to do it. And my first time at that podium, I was shaking like a leaf, and several times after. But it had to be. It's like this, moral imperative, and I just had to. And if the voters thought that I was a good voice for them, then with all humility, I have to do my best.
I'm wondering if you're seeing the same thing that I'm seeing right here. Remember a few years back when, Kristen would come in for an interview and, it was like one or two word things. And now she's just sitting there and she's relaxed and she's in the groove and...
Well, it's somewhat intimidating when you come in the start and you're just running and you don't know how people are going to react to whatever it is you say. And you have to be very conscious of what you say in the beginning.
Yeah, and I see like a 180 going on here. And
you look more comfortable.
Yeah, so it looks like, it didn't take you very long to really get accustomed to this type of thing, representing, folks in government.
I love that it looks that way. I love that it looks that way.
Realistically, you're unopposed. So, actually, you're unopposed.
Yeah, realistically, there were two kids and a brother to get ready this morning and out the door before 8:00, and so I just barely made it here on time. And so all my nerves were about the timing, and the rest of it's like, just talk to Ken.
I was doing one of these.
Oh, I wouldn't let you down. But previously I was running just and so fed up with the fact that because I had been running because when we were speaking with the ATSDR and the residents got to the mic, the city walked out and didn't listen to the residents. And so I was just like on fire. And now that you sort of peel back the onion of how the city works, first of all, it's a lot more intricate and a lot more complicated, and still requires a lot more modernization and science. So, all the same fire, but now it's a lot more complicated than it was.
Mm-hmm. What subs have you ended up on?
Oh, the committees?
Yes.
I'm chair of natural resources, and I'm on government relations.
Good one for you. So Brent assigned you that one then.
Well,
right?
you're going to keep her busy.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I know that he tries to match you up to your the best interest with what you specialize in, what you know about, or what you're passionate about. So that's the ideal sub for you to.
Oh, and I was grateful. And can you imagine what would have happened if I wasn't? Like, how much of a butting in would I be? So it's been. I think he did a good job. I think he used all of our talents in the best way.
Other subs.
Just government relations and natural resources.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
So getting those meetings recorded, getting some captioning. We've been working on it. We lost a little ground when we came back in person, but we're working on it.
Yeah. The captioning can be expensive if you don't utilize the real-time stuff that YouTube is offering now. I mean, actually, Zoom has some. The Zoom captioning now is not horrible.
Right.
But the thing is, you need to be using Zoom in order to do it, and it's been priced out just to have somebody there live doing the.
It's incredible, yeah.
It's incredibly expensive.
And the Zoom translations of our names were pretty fun.
I've seen a couple of them.
If you had the captioning on during the meeting, you have to turn it off because otherwise you'll get distracted.
So there are some hot topics in town right now. And recently, even though I haven't been trolling Facebook, I've seen them. I have seen people really noticing increased traffic in town, especially up by the turnpike, of course, but on Franklin Street. Mm-hmm. And I witnessed it this morning, and I waited for a minute and a half to turn on the Greylock Street. So, what are your thoughts on traffic in town?
We act sometimes like we're a very small town, and 41,000 is a whole lot of people.
Right.
And
it's bigger than Northampton.
Yeah, and we're a major route for people in the hill towns to get to the Pike, right? So we're going to have these problems. I think we probably need to go back to the data, reassess the lighting situation, the traffic situation, the hours, and maybe see if we can time some things better to move people through. I am not opposed to the idea of other off-ramps if we can find the right places to put them. We really need to help get people in and out of the city faster. Being across two rivers is not easy. Right? You always have to cross a bridge. You always have to get all of these people across.
That's where I am.
Yeah.
I was going to say, we should just put a bridge right next to your house, and that would solve a lot of problems.
No, honey. Oh, no. I don't want to. No.
Well, there is a place on that river.
Wasn't there one there before?
Yes, there was. There was a crossing that they actually drove their cars through, right where not too far below, like the 4 Mile store, where the country store is there on Northwest Road. Right below there, it's what we used to call a Ford Bridge. If you ever see the word Ford Bridge, that's what they're talking about. It's not a real bridge.
So you could still drive a Chevy on it, though, right?
No, that's the levee.
Okay, but what if the levee was? Never mind. Halfway through our interview with Kristen Mello, we're gonna hear from our underwriters and be right back.
Support for the community programming of WSKB is provided by the Dunkin' Donuts shops of Westfield and the Sardinia family. It's nice to know that even as the world changes, Dunkin' Coffee remains the same at 7 convenient locations throughout Westfield. Support for the community programming of WSKB is provided by Bay State Dental. Comprehensive dentistry at 14 convenient locations in Springfield, Chicopee, Longmeadow, West Springfield, Belchertown, East Longmeadow, Ludlow, Northampton, Greenfield, and Wilbraham, as well as 29 Broad Street in Westfield. Bay State Dental makes it a priority to help you achieve and maintain the healthy smile you deserve. On the web at baystatedental.com. Support for the community programming of WSKB is provided by Comcast and Xfinity.com, offering Xfinity TV, Internet, home phone, and home security services. Information on all that Xfinity has to offer in the Westfield area is available online at Xfinity.com.
Live from Studio 120 at Westfield Technical Academy, this is WCPC Channel 15 and 89.5 FM, WSKB Westfield.
And we are back. You know, it's starting to get a little quicker with the muting and unmuting in there.
Mm-hmm.
We're doing really good, I think.
Good.
Yeah.
We're good.
Thank
you.
Yeah, we had joked about driving a Chevy on a Ford bridge, and we talked about the levee. Now we have levees and dams and things like that here in town.
We do.
That need attention, right?
We do. We have a levee that's actually getting some great work on it now. That's a super, the Westfield River levee is getting some really good attention, but the Little River levee is in severe disrepair, and we really need to fix that.
Mm-hmm. At the same time, it also makes me think of Armbrook and Powder Mill Brook water control systems.
Correct, because the flood control dams up there are seriously old and need to be updated, and so we have some big projects up there coming up too.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you took my dam down, so at least I didn't have to worry about that. I live on Moose Meadow, and they removed the dam 2 years ago, I believe. No, last year. It was in the fall. And the issue is it was considered a low impact dam. It was erected in the 1800s. And if you'd ever been up to Toccoa, there were literally trees growing at the base of the dam.
That's
and
right.
Into it. There were roots, and it was nasty. And I had the opportunity to go up there again recently. We're going back. Can't even see where it was. The city did a magnificent job returning the brook to its original state. But it's low impact because, ta-da, Kristen, I'm the only house on the river.
Oh.
So if it does overflow, it's only going to take my house.
We'll come find you with a boat. I have to say, when they did that work, we do some yearly hikes up on Toccoa, and I have to say that they really worked to protect those older trees.
Yeah,
when they did that work, I was seriously impressed with the preservation that happened up there.
Yes, I went up with Woody Darling, and Woody said, "This is where the dam was. You can't tell.
Yeah,
you really can't." And we're going back in a few weeks, so
it's wonderful up there
before hunting season.
Right? Yes. Stay safe. The whole mountain turns yellow in the same week, and it's just.
Yeah, but I think, Ken, you were talking about dams. People aren't aware. And I'm sure Kristen can tell us more about how many dams and how many dikes there are in Westfield that protect us. And we don't even know about it.
No, there's a lot of water here. There's a ton of water here. And the Armbrook and the Powder Mill Brook flood control dams, they have been there a long, long, long time. And we've got some serious damage up there from ATV use. And, we're lucky that the federal government wants to come and help us with this. I think the city share is like 35%.
Mm-hmm.
So, even though we're looking at these sort of capital costs, we got a new school coming in way higher than they thought, and
way higher.
And the police building they want to talk about.
Oh yeah, that's true.
We have a lot of projects, but the amount of damage that would happen if these dams ever let go. They're not in danger of letting go right now, but they really need rehabilitation. And I'm super grateful for the Flood Control Commission, and some of them have been doing this for decades and decades and decades, and they have been so generous with their expertise and knowledge about this.
And Al really knows his stuff when it comes to this stuff.
Oh, yeah, and they invite us out. When the Army Corps comes out and they do their inspections, they invite us out and say, these are the culverts that are broken, and this is what it means when that happens. And, here's how the river has changed its path and what that means for the city.
Correct.
Yeah, it's so important.
And, that powder mill behind the high school, basically.
Correct.
That's trying to ensure that we never have a 1955 again.
Right.
It was the smaller brooks that did so much damage. Little River just decimated downtown. It came as far as Broad Street. I remember that flood, and you're correct. Powder Mill backed up on the railroad tracks and then just crashed through. Westfield, Lower Westfield, and took out Notre Dame Street, took out the factory, took out the, what was it, Anderson's? What was there? Was it Anderson's radiator?
Sterling.
Sterling
Yep.
radiator.
Sterling.
We're
Took
still
that.
finding pieces in our yard. Yeah. No,
I
really,
don't doubt it. I
everything,
don't doubt it.
everything in that area flooded, and there's just metal that you find when you go.
I've got a metal detector.
Come on over. That we got.
well, if we find something valuable, we'll split it.
I'm fairly certain it's not valuable. I think. I don't even want to do a soil sample. Let's not even think of it.
I've found watches and things like that at the beaches with my metal detector. So you never know if you're going to come across something valuable.
Mostly, it's like these slugs, these metal slug pieces. I guess that they used to cut out of metal, and
the knockouts from electrical boxes, that type of.
I don't know what they were used
Yeah.
for. They seem pretty heavy, and they're probably older than I was. So I don't
They
know.
were around all over the place when I was a kid because I remember we used to try to jam them into machines, trying to pretend that they were quarters, and trying to get away with something. Hey, anything to save $1 or two, right? Even when I was a kid.
But Christian, you were talking about your yard. What areas do you, are you a counselor at large? Are you a ward counselor? People out there need to know.
I am a counselor at large, so anybody who needs
serve
something.
everybody.
Yeah, I serve anybody who calls me. Yep.
And how many counselors at large are there on the city council?
There are 7 of us. So there are 6 ward counselors, 1 for each ward, and there are 7 at large, so that we don't tie as often as you might.
If you have an abstain or someone not present, you can end up.
We
with
can,
yeah, you can still end up with a tie. Speaking of ties, was it the Mullins rule that ended up coming into play this last council meeting?
In fact, it did.
Yeah,
that is what.
Mm-hmm. That means that if it used to be you can't vote on something if you weren't at the last meetings where it was discussed.
Right, if you weren't at the public hearing.
But now you can attest that you actually read the transcript or watched the video, and that allows you to vote.
To vote. And the thing is, in the case of the planning board, there is a little. Is that me? I'm humming.
No, we're getting a hum.
There's always a little bit of equipment noise coming from the other room.
There you go.
Yeah, it's not horrible.
Yeah, no. Especially in the case of the planning board, if people missed a public hearing and the public hearing went across a couple meetings, if you had another commitment, if there was some kind of mix-up, if you were sick, businesses could end up waiting a long, long time in order to have the right people in the meeting in order to get a vote in, and that's unfortunate. I don't know that that's exactly what happened in this particular case, but I'm not here to comment on anybody else's stuff.
If that vote wasn't allowed to happen, it probably would have been a tie.
If that vote wasn't allowed to happen, maybe it would have been a tie.
Mm-hmm.
I think it might have failed if that vote hadn't happened.
Yeah. So it's something important that a lot of people don't know about our government, and
correct.
Sure. Well, and you need to. You can't really talk about things that haven't happened as though they have already happened, and you can't say that something is definitely going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
You can't accuse people of things they haven't done. I just think it's sad if somebody says, if you don't like it, vote us out in November when you're running unopposed. I think that's I think that's just rude. And
that's the first time I've heard that one.
It was said at the meeting where the Mullins rule was voted on, and I was not pleased about that.
I was doing the video on that one, and I didn't catch that.
Go back.
Yeah. I don't tell anyone, but I want to kind of go in there and steal that painting just for myself.
You know what? I can't draw stick figures, and any artist that makes the painting where it looks like what it's supposed to be, I am impressed with.
Yeah.
But there were some problematic images in that.
There were, but the artistry was gorgeous on that.
Yeah,
and if you were the one who painted it and you're watching this,
it's beautiful.
It is a very beautiful, beautiful painting.
Yeah, it just can't hang in City Hall right now.
No. I've got 2 minutes left to go. Did you want to mention anything about the testing with combine the PFAS and the COVID thing?
If I remove my city councilor hat and put on my raft director hat, I can do that. But if it's a city council interview, I cannot.
Okay.
So,
all right.
Would you like me to?
I'm allowing you to take your hat off.
Hi, I'm Kristen Mello, director and co-founder of RAFT, Westfield Residents Advocating for Themselves. We're a community group, an ad hoc community group that formed around the PFAS contamination of the Barnes Aquifer and the contamination that we as residents of Westfield drank, especially on the north side. And this year, because of COVID and the fact that coronavirus is a brand new virus and nobody was born with immunity to it, epidemiologists and other scientists up at UMass Amherst have partnered with RAFT and the Medical Reserve Corps to do some testing. It's single person, you do it yourself, dried blood spot testing for PFAS and COVID antibodies after you've gotten your vaccination, so that they can track how our bodies respond to the COVID-19 vaccines, because PFAS contamination is known to be immune toxicants. So,
and I allowed you to take your hat off for that because I think any type of study should have a good sample of people to take part of it. Just get in touch with you if
that's right.
Everyone's interested in.
Yep, you can call my phone. That's on the city website. You can find me on Facebook. If you call my phone, due to the fact that my phone number is on the internet, I have an enormous amount of opportunities to extend my car warranty. So if you call me on the phone, you can send me a text first to say who you are, or you can leave me a message and I'll call you back, but I don't answer unknown numbers. So
I don't either. 8:59 3/4. Kristen Mello, I want to thank you for coming in and spending some time with us this morning.
Kristen.
Thank you both for having me. Thank you so much for doing these interviews. It really, really matters. Thank you.
It does.
We think it matters too.
It does.
Okay, Curtis. Look at this. Good job, Curtis. Our next interview starts at 9:05, and we're at 9:04 3/4. And we got the video switched back over.
And we are back.
And now we're looking at John Beltrandi now instead.
The magic of television.
Yes.
Hey,
Good
live
morning,
and in
John.
person.
Yes.
Yes, you are.
Hello.
Are you going to hand out 8x10 glossies with an autograph?
No, I charge for those. Actually,
Me too.
Those aren't free.
Me too, but I don't make any money out of it, John. Welcome. We're glad to have you. Thank you for coming in to WSKB.
Nice to be here.
WCPC.
See what I did there?
What did you do there?
I made the camera symmetrical with the.
Oh, well, of course
subjects.
you did. I don't even.
It's an OCD thing.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
You have to be balanced in here.
I'm fairly imbalanced.
We're talking about visually.
Okay. So joining me now is Councilor John Beltrandi. Good morning, John.
Good morning. How are you?
All right. This is different than years past. Years past, we had the same number of questions and the same questions we'd pose to each and every councilor because a lot of people weren't running opposed.
Right.
But now with everyone unopposed except for the Ward 1 race, we're just doing it differently. We're just going free form. Just chatting. Getting your latest views and feelings on what's going on in the city. But before we actually get into any of the hot topics in the city, I'm just wondering what made you run for city council. And I'm going to have you come closer to the mic.
You need to be closer.
No, that's fine. It's been almost 10 years, I guess. So going back 10 years ago, I thought that some things needed to change. I thought that some new perspective on the council would be good. Back when I ran, there was some people on there that had been for a long, long time. And, I think change is pretty good, as you move forward. And I think being a business person in the community, I thought I could, bring something to the table that really wasn't there before. Dealing with the city on both sides, as I do now, as a business person dealing with the city business-wise, and also on the other side dealing with the political side, I got kind of a unique perspective on how things work.
Yeah. I'm curious of your perspective on one thing that not necessarily city related, but this doesn't have to be city related. As a GC, how have things been the past year or so with supplies?
You hit it right on the head. I'm actually building a house in downtown Westfield, and I've been waiting. I think it's going on 14 weeks for windows. Things that I used to get in 2 to 3 weeks. They've been delayed twice. They're telling me they'll be here this week. I'm optimistic, hoping that that's the case. many other things, things you don't think about. Garage doors. I stopped at my garage door supplier on Southampton Road yesterday, and he's got a whole warehouse full of garage doors. However, he has no springs, and he's looking at literally weeks. So he can't do installations because he doesn't have springs, but he has doors. So the supply chain is ruptured. It's been, to say the least, an interesting 9 or 10 months. You've seen a dramatic change in the economics of things, if I can say. Gas is $1.10 more than it was a year ago. Diesel fuel, we use a tremendous amount of that. I've gone 33% higher to fill up my diesel fuel. And everything to maintenance products, anything that you bring to the table has increased dramatically.
How does that work with your clients and your contracts with these price increases?
Well, just to give you some perspective, we're doing some work down in the shops for a Connecticut outfit that we do some work for, and I bid the job back in October of last year, and they awarded the contract in July. It took them that long to kind of get their stuff together. And when they finally gave me the contract, I had to increase my price by 15%,
right?
Because I couldn't do it for the same price as I was. Because that's the reality of it. And I wasn't adding 15% to my bottom line. That 15% is directly related to the product.
Yeah.
That's it.
And in my line, when I was doing quotes, if somebody approved it 5-6 months later, completely useless because the product that I offered changed every 4 months. So now you might have to resource something too, which would be a real drag.
And what we're doing now is we're basically quoting things on a bi-weekly basis. I'm saying that these prices are good for 14 days, and they're subject to change. And it's tough on the consumer because the wages haven't caught up. So when you're looking at things and everybody's saying that things aren't really that different, they are. Because just to give you an example, and I'm sure you've seen this, if you go to the grocery store, you're buying you're buying cereal, and you're paying the same price as you paid a year ago, but it's a smaller box. That's what people aren't getting a hold of here.
Right.
It's a smaller box. So, the product that they're putting out, they're kind of tricking the public, saying, okay, you're still paying $2.89 for this, but you're getting 3 ounces less.
Yeah. Have you seen the latest prepackaged deli ham?
Oh, yeah.
Not 16 ounce, not a pound anymore. It's 14.
Yeah, and everything's going that direction. You've literally got thousands of ships, out in the ocean right now, sitting there that can't deliver product.
Putting bigger divots in the bottom of bottles in order to get an extra half ounce of nothing.
Well,
correct.
And you'll appreciate this, both of you. You know who Matt Roman is,
right?
Yes,
Matt Roman is one of our dearest friends. The city council. He's been around forever. He comes in and he speaks his mind. I was talking to him a couple weeks ago at the post office, and he told me a story. And Matt's always got a story, so if you see him, you're bound for about 15 minutes.
Yeah, you're stuck.
Walk away slowly.
He told me that he was talking to the Dunkin' Donuts people, the Sardinas,
right?
And he told Mr. Sardini, he said, I don't understand what how you don't get this. He said, you made the donut smaller. And he said, well, we did. He said, because it's kind of how things are headed. He said, you should have made the hole bigger. Think about that for a second.
True.
Yeah.
Well, he's a brilliant guy. I mean, really. Make the hole bigger. Nobody's going to notice. Make the donut smaller. They're going to notice.
Yeah. That's funny.
That's
funny.
But
but then the donut holes are bigger.
Yes, so the munchkins are bigger.
Munchkins, yeah.
Absolutely.
There you go.
And the kids will love it.
Right.
So you are probably someone really good to talk to this about. If I do want to hit upon some city things. As a builder, commodities are going up. Real estate is up. Now, we didn't go up on taxes again, but taxes are up because real estate values are up.
Correct.
How have you been contacted at all regarding this?
I really haven't, surprisingly. Nobody's really said anything because, relatively, they're looking at it and things have been good for a while. Okay. People have a little more money in their pocket. That's starting to change. And I think you'll see and I'm seeing it because I'm also a real estate broker. I have been for 40 years. And our company's seeing products staying on the market longer than they were before. Okay, we were in a time back, maybe 6 months ago when you put a house on the market and you had 15 or 20 offers, on this property above asking price.
Within a day or two.
Yeah, and I had a property downtown Westfield that we had an open house on back in the summer, and there was, I think it was 31 couples there in the 2-hour period, and we had 15 offers, all above asking price. And now you're seeing stuff that's going on the market. It's staying on the market for not a tremendous amount of time, but it's longer than it was. So you're seeing a change.
Right.
But people haven't really said much about the real estate taxes because it hasn't really started to hit. But it will. It will.
They're just coming out now.
Yeah.
We just got our bill a couple of days ago.
Yeah. I was looking at potential future costs, and that's why I asked that.
But explain that, though, because people don't understand when they get their tax bill and it's higher, they'll say, oh, but taxes didn't go up. So you need to explain that to people.
Well, the evaluation, your house is worth more than it was. The evaluation's up. And, typically, if you look at the average house, and I'm not sure exactly on the percentage, but it's quite a bit higher than it was a couple of years ago.
Right. So if you have a house that's worth $1,000 and your tax is $3 on every $1,000.
Correct.
Now your house is worth $2,000. Well, you're $6 in tax now instead of $3.
I don't think people in general understand that concept because they're not following the real estate market. I understand it. I get it. But I think most people don't.
And something that I found pretty interesting, actually, over the past year is that we've had a number of people that have put their house on the market and sold it because it was at the absolute top, huge money.
I almost did that.
And they're renting. A couple of people that I know have family that has rental properties, and they're renting for a couple of years because they're going to see a market adjustment. It's going to happen. I mean, it is. I can tell you, I've been doing this for a long time. Okay, it's going to happen. Okay? I'm not trying to give you the gloom and doom, but the reality is the adjustment is going to happen.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when that adjustment happens, these people are going to get back in the market. They're going to buy on the downside, and they're going to pocket that money that they had. Which is, hey,
and I've been saying that too for quite a while, and that's what I'm betting on in the next 5 to 10 years. Right.
You have to stay in your house for a reason.
I have to stay there for a reason, but I almost got rid of it with these values being up, and then I'm like, well, what am I going to buy to replace it at this point? Because that was the problem. 9:15 and a half. Curtis, we're going to do a quick break and then come back with Counselor John Beltrandi.
Underwriting for WSKB's community radio programming is brought to you in part by R. Levesque Associates. They are offering landscape architecture, civil engineering, environmental permitting, and land surveying. RLA is a second-generation company devoted to excellence in the planning and design of outdoor spaces. On the web at rlaland.com or at 40 School Street in Westfield.
Support for community radio on WSKB provided by Westfield Electroplating. Employing over 140 skilled platers, painters, and technicians, Westfield Electroplating was founded in 1946 and was the first company in the country to achieve National Aerospace and Defense Contractor Program accreditation, proudly maintaining that status for over a decade. Westfield Electroplating provides over 50 quality finishes to meet your corrosion, cosmetic, or performance needs. On the web at www.westfieldplating.com or 413-568-3716. Westfield Electroplating, putting the finishing touches on technology.
Live from Studio 120 at Westfield Technical Academy, this is WCPC Channel 15 and 89.5 FM, WSKB Westfield.
And Curtis is keeping us right on track.
He is. He's doing a great job.
Yes. Now, I have yet to determine if he used my audible cue or if he waited for me to do that.
I not know.
You know what? The world may never know.
They won't. I'm in my glass tin cage.
It's a great background you got there, too. I just noticed that.
Yeah, it changes from week to week. Sometimes I have trains running in the background from all over the world.
We do.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, we decided to just, keep it really simple and easy for today. What's not simple and easy is development up on the north side. Now, I was watching planning board and everything the past few weeks, the combined meeting. I know where your head's at, but for people who didn't watch that, where are you with the proposed data center?
I think it's a great idea.
Mm-hmm.
We need the development, we need the revenue.
Mm-hmm.
Although I would like to, I'd like to see a couple dollars more a square foot for us.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to see a little bit sweeten the pot a little bit for us. So, every dollar that goes above that 60, I think Dave Flaherty, who's the expert on the numbers, will tell you that it probably represents about $280,000 in tax revenue per dollar per year. So if you could sweeten that a little bit, it would make places like this, our academy here. I'd like to see some money flow into here.
Right. I saw that, where you wanted to add that into the, by the way, if you come here, support the Tech Academy.
Right. And the other thing is I really strongly want to see, the local people benefit from this. One of the things that I've always kind of been, I'd say pissed about, okay? Bad word, but is that, these things come in and all the jobs end up going to, big firms from, outside the area. They bring in these jobs. These local people here, we need to benefit from this. We need to have some local people that, that benefit from this whole package.
I don't think that's a hard ask.
Well, it's not a hard ask, but it's a hard do. Because what happens is that, when you look at these things, and I get it, they say, well, your local HVAC guy isn't going to be able to handle a 200,000 square foot HVAC job. I get that. But, I think they need to hire from within the community. So if some of these outfits are coming in, we need to kind of hold their feet to the fire and say, you need to make jobs available to people in Westfield, okay, people in this community. Because if you're benefiting from this, let everybody feed at the trough a little bit. I think that's a good idea.
Now, where are you at when, the proposed data center gets a real good deal, and then another company comes in and they're looking for a sweet deal, like the 40-year deal that's being proposed now? I mean, did you start a precedent by doing this?
Yeah, well, I think if you look at it realistically, I don't know how many of these will come along,
right,
of this magnitude. So I think you need to take everything on its face value, and you need to say, okay, this is what we have today. All right, this is what we're dealing with. It's easy to to look forward and say, what if, but speculation isn't always your best friend when it comes to this stuff. Because that particular area up there is an area that I'm not sure what you're going to get for development there if you don't do this.
It's a tough area.
Yeah, it is. And these people have spent an enormous amount of money and time, okay, getting this thing put together. There's a lot of environmental concerns up there, as there always is on the north side. And I think they've done a good job of addressing those. And we'll see moving forward how they do with the state and the local conservation people. You've got the box turtle and other issues up there that have been around for a long time, and they're not going to go away.
Right.
So if you've got something that can come into the community and marry well with what's there, I think you need to look at it individually. And again, if you're asking me if something came along 5 years from now and had the same thing, yeah, I'm open to anything. As long as it's good for the community. I think that's what you need to look at. You need to look at and I think that's what my job is, as one of the 13 city councilors, is to look at things objectively and say, is this the best deal for the city, looking forward? You got to remember, I have children and grandchildren that live here, so I'm vested in the community. So for me, you look at the whole picture and say, what works 40 years from now? I'm not going to be here 40 years from now. You're probably not going to be here 40 years.
I doubt it. Yeah.
So, you need to have a little bit of vision and say, what benefits my children and grandchildren moving forward. And I like to think that, I do that based on what I think is in my heart, what the best thing is.
I'm digging when you say, get local people involved, and give us a little bit more. Give us a little more bite into it, because it can really help out the community. And then something in the back of my head turns around, And it was a quote from the person who was responsible for me being here today, former Mayor Dan Knappich, always used to say, half a loaf of bread is better than no bread at all.
That's true. And, that's why I say you have to take things individually and you have to look at them and say, and a lot of times, Ken, you know this as well as I do, and anybody that tells you different would be lying. You never make the right decision every time, okay? Mm-hmm. So you have to take individually things. And at the time when you look at them and you make a decision, it's a decision you base on what's best at the time. Mm-hmm. That may not be the same 20 years from now. Everybody can look back and say that, well, you could have done this or you should have done this. Mm-hmm. But you don't have that opportunity. You can't look into the future. You just have to deal with what you have today. Mm-hmm.
For a second, I wanted to look into the future and see what your thoughts would be on who's going to be up in the president's seat in January. But we're still in October, and it's probably a little too early to even speculate right now.
I'm.
Oh, okay.
I'm good.
Okay. Are we talking you?
Well, actually, I had expressed, that I would like to do it, but Councilor Oniski, who I think the world of, great counselor, good guy. Mm-hmm. He expressed that he would like to take a shot at it, and I think Bill will do a good job. So, my support after he asked me is with Bill, and I think that. I think he has the votes to do it, and again, I think he'll do a great job. So that's where I am today.
And he will be on Tina Gorman's Wake Up Wednesday tomorrow morning between 6 and 8.
Really?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes. Mary Beth Berrien.
If I had a choice, I would have took her. I didn't know I had a choice. See,
the choice was in that email I sent out.
Ouch.
Yeah. Tomorrow it's
allergies.
6:35 is Oniski. Then just after 7 is Figgy, and then after that, challenger to Ward 1, Mary Beth Berrien.
Oh.
So that's the lineup for tomorrow.
So were you able to get everybody?
The offer went out to everybody. Not everyone accepted to come in. 14 people running. I offered 14 slots. I had that's fair.
I think so.
Yeah. And one person had a conflict with work. One person decided, not to. Flat out not to, and the others I just didn't hear from. Maybe they're thinking, okay, they're unopposed, right? But it's still nice to get in front of your constituents, just to you talk about something. It doesn't have to be city stuff like the first 5 minutes with us. I mean, just watching you and hearing you talk about things, it gives you an idea of how to approach you or how approachable you are, so that if they have issues in your ward or if you're at large, they might feel a little more at ease approaching you.
Well, and 2 years goes by pretty quick. Snap your fingers.
It does matter.
Yeah,
it does matter, because what you say now really influences what people might think at the next election.
Right. And the other thing, too, is that, I had a number of people say, you're unopposed. Why are you putting signs out? Well, I've got probably 25 out now. I'll probably put another 25 out in the coming weeks. Mm-hmm. But I think it's important for people to know that, I'm still out there, and, I'm answering my phone. I'm talking to people constantly. Mm-hmm. They need to know that this is a job for me. Okay, mm-hmm. This is something that I take seriously, and my wife will tell you I don't need the extra work. I got plenty to do.
Yeah.
All right, but it's something I'm passionate about. Mm-hmm. It's something I feel strongly about, and I like to think that I've been just about 10 years now. Mm-hmm. So after that amount of time, you'd like to think that you're doing something that people appreciate. And you're there.
Pre-COVID, you used to come in a lot.
Yes.
And I haven't really had anyone come in during the past year and a half. A few Zoom things here and there. Yeah. But as we start to normalize more often, and when we get into the next term, I'm expecting to see more of you folks come in here.
Well, and I think you've known me for a while now, and I'm not afraid to address things. I'm not afraid to come in and talk to you. Mm-hmm. In fact, I appreciate the ability that you give me to come in here and say some things. It's one of these things where if you're if you're not passionate about it, don't do it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, just step away.
Mm-hmm.
And people get to that point. You see it. A lot of officials as they go along, you start to see their demeanor change.
Mm-hmm.
When they get to a certain point, just don't run again.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I mean,
yeah, it's not worth the $12,000 or whatever the stipend is.
No, and if you ask me a tough question,
mm-hmm.
I'm fine. If I can't answer the question, I'll step away. That's
or maybe give you a tough answer too.
Yeah, you might not like it.
You might not like it. And I have seen you during council where what comes out of your mouth is not always favorable among other people there.
Yeah.
And, that's okay. That's what makes a council.
Well, that's the thing. If you're there to be best friends with everybody,
mm-hmm.
you're there for the wrong reason.
Uh-huh.
Okay? Because, and respectfully, there's 13 people there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? We don't all agree on everything.
Yeah.
Okay? That's a given. I have, within your own household, we have 5 people that we have in our household growing up, my kids. We don't all agree on everything.
Mm-hmm.
That's just not the reality of it.
Yeah.
So, if you can bring people together and get a consensus, a lot of votes are 7-6. You see it. Okay.
Yeah. The Mullins ruling came into play this past week because of that.
And actually, I think that's based on what we've gone through for the past 2 years, that needed to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because there are times when people, life gets in the way,
mm-hmm.
and you can't be there. I like to say that, my attendance in 10 years, I think, if you look back with the city clerk, I'm pretty
mm-hmm.
sure I can't tell you this many times that I haven't made meetings
right
in 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm serious about it, okay? And if you can't make a meeting for a reason, there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to vote.
Mm-hmm.
Watch the video.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, vote.
Yeah.
That's what you're there for. Really, that's what your job is.
Mm-hmm.
Charlie Medeiros used to say it all the time.
Yeah.
You're there to vote. Okay?
Mm-hmm. And you just looked just like him, too, when you did that. You're there to vote.
That's it. But
9:29.5. I want to thank you, John Beltrandi, for coming in and spending a little bit of your time with us this morning.
Oh, thank you for having me. And I'm available anytime you want. If you want to chat, look me up.
All right. And people can also find you. I know you're online, aren't you?
I'm all over the place.
You're all over the place. So just look for John Beltrandi on,
got it. Yeah.
or city website, cityofwestfield.org, and his email is listed there, too.
Absolutely. My phone number's there. You can call me anytime.
All right. Thanks a lot, John.
Thanks, Ken.
All right. Curtis?
Studio 120 at Westfield Technical Academy. This is WCPC Channel 15 and 89.5 FM, WSKB Westfield.
And Curtis doing a fine job in the control room, operating our mics and our video feeds. In this next 25 minutes, I have in the studio Dan Alley. Good morning, Dan.
Good morning, Ken. Good morning, Kathy. Good morning, Curtis.
Yes. So this isn't like years past where we had the same 10 questions we were asking to the same people in the same amount of time. We're just free form. It doesn't all have to be about the city stuff. It's just, getting you in front of the camera in a sitting other than on Zoom or in council chambers for the first time.
And it looks like Hollywood Squares.
Yeah. Curtis's microphone, number one, is just a tad hot. You probably want to bring that down maybe 2 lines on the potentiometer there. All right. So I'm producing. I'm directing now and producing as well because Pete's. Pete, if you're watching the feed streaming, Pete, I hope you get back with everything going on with Southwest. So I will ask first off. That's going to be question number 2. I just noticed something when you walked in here, and it looks like you've lost some weight, my friend.
I've lost about 30 pounds.
Uh-huh.
People didn't know me when I was, in the military and running the Boston Marathon.
Mm-hmm.
I come from a long line of skinny people on my mother's side.
Right.
And so earlier this year, this is a direct result of giving the body all the minerals and the biology that it's supposed to have. You probably know that I started a farm and a small garden.
We can talk about that in a bit too.
Yeah. So it's all growing with minerals and letting the plants restore and build the soil. And when you give your body everything that it needs, when it comes to your immune system, your digestion, every other aspect, it just works the way it's supposed to. So I'm 62 years old. Still have most of my hair. My eyesight is improving. I have all kinds of energy, and I haven't looked like this, since I was like,
last time I've seen you at City Council chambers working the meetings a few times, but I haven't gotten this close up to you.
I can't even
and really looked. And last time I saw you, you were at my house in your yellow Mustang. I think we were doing some work with a video or something.
Oh, right.
And I'm just your whole face was much rounder then.
Yes, yeah. So
Yeah.
we've shrunk down a little bit, and but I feel great, and I can't even remember the last time I was sick. So what started out to be a family garden and trying to schedule things in and around family vacations or a short growing season and replacing crops, let's say from the spring to the fall, because if you're still picking, you can't plant something else, so you might start transplants. And I got tired of trying to figure all that stuff up, so I created a grid and a schedule and a calendar so that I could grow. Our growing season is about 141 days or whatever. You can extend it with hoop houses and that sort of thing. And then the year of the 350th, I got the bright idea of getting all the coffee grounds from Starbucks and Dunkin' Donuts, about 5-gallon buckets a day, and just put it on the garden on top of the leaves and that sort of thing. And I ended up with a mess of biblical proportions. So we would do, and I think there was like a parade every 5 minutes in the city. You did the Veterans Day, Memorial Day. You did the 350th, which went on for like forever,
3 hours
exactly. And to go home and flip compost for 2 hours because of all the stuff that was in the ground. There was nothing available for the plants. So I started studying. I never planned on a degree in microbiology, by the way, but I just started hot composting, studying it. Came across Dr. Elaine Ingham, who discovered the soil food web, which is just the relationship of plants. And believe it or not, plants are sitting in all the minerals that they need. There's enough minerals in 1 gram of the sand, silt, and clay. You have that much on your shoe right now to fertilize 10 acres.
It's funny. You mentioned the coffee grounds. Kathy, in the 70s and 80s, that was a big thing. Saving your coffee grounds, and I remember that.
But don't show up with 5-gallon buckets a day. And do that from like December through April. So that all had to come up. And I ended up with 4 huge compost piles, all aerobic and that sort of thing. And like I said, I just kept studying this Dr. Elaine Ingham, basically the concept of hot composting and doing it correctly, aerobic and that sort of thing. And she made this statement that 1 gram, and she's credentials are through the roof. Top soil biologist on the planet, and she says 1 gram of the sand, silt, and clay, parent material of soil, has all the minerals, but the plants can't access it directly. So we provide the conditions for the plants. The plants actually make topsoil. We've all seen it. If you ever lifted up a plant up out of the ground, and the sand, silt, and clay are all sort of stuck there on the roots, it's glued there by the bacteria, the oxygen-loving bacteria, and the mycorrhizal fungi. They're making topsoil. You could leave that in the ground, and the worms are in there. The worms have no interest in the plant. They're in eating the critters that the plants are also giving 60% of their sugars to feed these organisms. They're building topsoil and controlling the pH of the soil and actually building topsoil. That's where it comes from. You can't buy it in a bag. You've had people before, let's say, buy really good soil, and then 2 years later, it's like, what happened to it? Right. Probably the nitrate fertilizers that you were using killed the biology. There might not have been any mycorrhizal fungi in your home garden or yard anyways. The average farm, you couldn't find a worm. There's nothing for them to eat. So this is the way God and nature intended things to grow. Feel free to stop by at my house, whatever. The home garden's turned into like Salad Central. But I'm growing perennial.
You had so much stuff you were setting up at the market, weren't you?
Correct. We're at the farmer's market, and this Thursday is the last day for the farmer's market. And one of the conditions for me to farm down the street, the Conservation Commission had to approve about 60% of the land in Westfield is under the jurisdiction of the Conservation Commission, either over water or...
That's wetlands down there, right?
Well, the whole street, the whole city is a floodplain, and my end of the street, you can't buy a puddle, and on the other end, at one point, I think we had like 10 inches of water, just, go over. So this is a very tough year to start farming because of all the rain and the lack of sun, and we set every weather record, sometimes 4 days in a row. So it was a very tough year to do that. But that was all also a direct result of publishing this book, which is called Growing with Minerals, a spring and fall planting guide, Growing with Minerals. I'm actually have to print it a 3rd time. We've sold out. I think right now, other than the library, I think Westfield Feed has the last few copies, and we'll publish it again, print it again. It's all self-published. And obviously I've been focusing on other things than pushing a book. But all of these autoimmune diseases, chronic illnesses, mystery illnesses, food allergies, things with our kids that didn't exist a generation ago. Can't digest food, can't sleep at night. What's the main ingredient in melatonin? It's magnesium. Relaxes the body, whether you're an athlete or just it relaxes the veins, the heart, and you're able to sleep. Every cell in the body needs magnesium. So in my case, through the application of compost done correctly, and applying compost tea, almost has an inoculant or a mulch. Not just that soft, spongy stuff that we loaded up. You're feeding microorganisms. You don't need a truckload of manure to get things to grow. Like I said, 1 gram of the sand, silt, and clay actually has enough minerals. It's just that the plants can't accept it.
And one time when you were last over at my place, I absorbed and I listened to you for 45 minutes talking about, very little amount of soil is really needed for all these nutrients. And for the first time in years and years and years, we put our tomato plants into buckets instead of in the ground and did not use any fertilizer at all. And we had the best year ever, even though it rained and rained and rained. It was so wet. We had the best year ever for tomatoes because of that.
It's the transition to something that's totally natural and organic. It takes a while for the plant to do it. I think we talked in your yard, there were acidic plants.
Yes, you were pointing them out.
And so we all know that we can't grow grass or flowers next to a pine tree. But if that plant's controlling the pH, all plants do it. We just can't expect the vegetable that's going to be on the ground for 2 or 3 months to save the day. But there's ways of doing it. And so it's that transition from I came from landscaping and agriculture. From that style of growing things or juicing the plant, right? Because you're just interrupting the process that nature would have. But if you can go through that transition, all of a sudden, like I said, when you lift up, we've all seen it. We've lifted up that thing and seen sand, silt, and clay, and 2 of those are dust when you dry them out, right? They're not wet. They're not stuck there. They're glued there. They're making topsoil. That's how nature does it. You see it in the woods. Mycorrhizal fungi is that white stringy stuff that you see when a log is rotting in the woods. That's a one-cell creature. So if you can see it with your eyes, there's probably like nearly 100,000 miles of the stuff. Get a little pinch of that, get that into your compost, introduce that. It spreads like wildfire, and that expands the root system to the microscopic level. Basically, it's the bacteria and the mycorrhizal fungi that produce the acids and enzymes that can break down organic material, which is compost, or the minerals that are locked in the crystal structure of the sand, silt, and clay. And that releases it to these organisms. They get eaten by the worms and other things and makes it available. They're making topsoil. That transition is usually important. If you look at the price of fertilizer now, which is like $75 a bag,
right?
Go get coop poop, which is like $22 for 40 pounds, and put that on your lawn. And my whole yard is basically organic at this point, and we're letting the grass and the flowers, and I've got a perennial garden of flowers that 4 months ago we were parking cars on it, and it's amazing. There's 12-foot sunflowers.
Kathy, you have all the fertilizer in the world you need, don't you?
I do.
Yeah, well,
I don't have chickens, though.
Yeah, well, you only need about 10% high nitrogen in your compost. Like I said, you're feeding microorganisms, so you don't need to show up with, like I said, a truckload of manure.
Yeah.
You're overloading the system. Too much nitrogen or too much phosphorus is a problem.
Yeah, you can't do it too heavily.
Well,
we can't do it.
Yeah, but that mistake that I made is what led to researching that, coming across Dr. Elaine Ingham. Basically, she's in the 60s, and she discovered what's called the soil food web. Look it up. And like I said, I came from agriculture. I grew up in a farming town. My family are landscapers. We knew how to grow stuff. Grow stuff. I could grow grass on a bowling ball, but you might not want to eat it.
All right, so 10 minutes in, I do want to know, and I see that you have lists and notes, and I know you like to refer to things and bring things up. Before you even look at what you want to cover there, I want to ask you, what made you run for city council?
In my case, it was that for 6 months, Ward 2 did not have a city councilor. We had a councilor leave, and the council was woe to fill the position with an individual, Brian Winters, who had gotten 2 votes.
Okay, you're talking about when Jim Brown left.
Yes.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And so I originally was going to run for Ward 2. So I pulled papers. I think I was the first one to do it. And I was involved with another activity for another month or so. So by the time I started collecting signatures, you had Ralph Figge, Carl Vincent, and Brian Winters. Really wasn't sure. He had a young family, whether or not he was going to run. But I think he had pulled papers.
Mm-hmm.
So he had 4 people running in the lowest voter turnout ward there is.
Yeah, and I complain and bitch about that every single election.
Yeah. Well,
my ward, I'm embarrassed with the numbers that come out of it.
Well, it's but there's other reasons for that.
There are.
So, but that being said, that would become a crapshoot. I mean, you have, Ralph Figge was very well known. I mean, him and I both had worked with kids and that sort of thing, and you could work your heart out and come up short. So I know I can work. And so I got on my bicycle and just, and I worked on campaigns before. I would always work on campaigns and help people, regular people run for office, or first-time candidates. I had never really intended to run myself.
Mm-hmm.
So then I just pulled papers and I went in the ward and, even kids that I had, coached or, worked with and different things were like, oh yeah, well, we know Ralph Figge too. And it's like, all right, so I'm like, you know what? So I finished Ward 2, and then I decided to pull papers at large. I think that was in June or so. And just got on my bicycle, because there's 164 miles of roads and about 300 miles of driveways.
Mm-hmm.
And so I knew that I could, you're running for an office. You're not really running against anybody. So I kind of liked that aspect of it. And one of my favorite things of the whole thing was, one, it was a lot of exercise. I lost a lot of weight. I lose a lot of weight every year during campaigns, but I got to meet people. I got to meet, for instance, your dad. I mean, there's people that you would meet, and relationships, and it's at large. So you'd be meeting somebody in Ward 5, and they're like, oh, you talked to my dad in Ward 1.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, wow, So Westfield is a great place. I mean, we move here. The ones of us that have chosen to live here is because Westfield is a great place to live. We've got great people. It's a big city that doesn't feel like a big city, but it's really spread out.
Mm-hmm.
And so to meet people and to hear their stories, people that, whatever the story was, whether they lived within their means of their whole life and they were really concerned about being taxed out of, and this wasn't somebody that lived above their means.
Mm-hmm.
That resonates with you. And I didn't grow up in Westfield, so that really had an effect on me because when I was running, I was like, who the heck is Dan Alley?
Mm-hmm.
And so I had to work very hard at it, but you would hear the stories, whether it was young families, business owners, whatever, and I learned a lot. I learned a lot about Western Massachusetts. I learned a lot about Westfield, the state of Massachusetts. We got a lot of really good people here that, that experiences. That's really my favorite part of all of this.
Mm-hmm.
And that stuff will stick with you. I didn't grow up here. It's not like I had 1,000 high school buddies that are like, oh yeah, Dan Alley's a good guy, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
There was none of that at all. And so that's really why I ran. I mean, we didn't have a city council, and I thought that was kind of unfair.
Mm-hmm.
Westfield is a little cliquey. When it gets to politics, it's, you have the same people running things.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody should have a voice. That's why my signs, they don't put the office on it anymore. It's just your voice matters.
Right.
And for me, the biggest accomplishment in, let's say, 8 years has been that people would at least feel they had counselors or a city council that would listen.
Mm-hmm.
Because that used to drive me nuts when city council would say, well, there's nobody here. Well, they might have been here in the past, but if you weren't listening, that's an issue. People are kind of pragmatic. So we're supposed to be self-governing. People are supposed to take a role. They're supposed to believe that they can be the change, right? We all, we're all members of a community.
Of the people, by the people, for the people.
Yeah, and I grew up in a colonial town as old as Westfield.
Mm-hmm.
Dighton was, founded, I think, in 60s and 69. I mean, we're all within a couple years of it. So I was, president of the Junior Historical Society. I mean, you grow up with that stuff. They taught civics. They taught history. We were living it. The house in front where I lived, across the street, the Winslow Davis house, they don't even know what year it was built. Mm-hmm. They just know the year that the first records were like 1690, and it was just there,
Right.
And so I always loved history. But like I said, I grew up in an area where it was real.
Okay, great. I do need to do a break for underwriters. When we come back, we are going to have about 6 minutes. Curtis?
Underwriting support for the community programming of WSKB is provided by the Greater Westfield Chamber of Commerce, the voice of business for the Greater Westfield communities. Informing, educating, advocating, the Chamber provides opportunities for members to make meaningful connections on local, regional, and state levels. For more information on the Chamber's many events, workshops, and programs, as well as the benefits of membership, visit westfieldbiz.org. The Chamber focuses on the most important economy, yours.
One of our underwriters here at WSKB's Community Radio is Carson Center for Health and Human Services, a nonprofit organization located at 20 Broad Street in Westfield. They provided behavioral health and rehabilitation services in communities throughout Western Massachusetts since 1963. There are services for children, adolescents, adults, families, and couples. You can find them on the web at carsoncenter.org or at 413-572-4132.
Support for community radio on WSKB is provided by Betts Plumbing and Heating Supply Company, an independent, family-owned wholesaler serving Westfield for over 50 years, specializing in plumbing, heating, and industrial piping supplies. On the web at bettsplumbing.com or at 14 Coleman Avenue in Westfield.
Live from Studio 120 at Westfield Technical Academy, this is WCPC Channel 15 and 89.5 FM, WSKB Westfield.
Okay, Kathy, I know what I want to ask Dan, but before I actually get into this, I'm just wondering if there is anything that you wanted to get out or ask or what have you.
Well, he's answered a lot of the questions that I had. I was very interested in how he got into the planting and the farming, the products we're doing. That was my major. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, you asked why he ran for city council. Mm-hmm. I would say, what do you think your impact is on the council, Dan? What kind of interest do you bring to them, or anything in particular that you think is your strong suit?
I'm going to probably echo Councilor Beltrandi in that, obviously I'm very pro-business, but I'm very independent-minded, and I think our job is to vote and to consider whether it's a business coming into town or, whether the Supreme Court's decided, our residency requirement, is not constitutional, which I actually agree with. That was kind of unusual. But so I think it's just that, one is objectivity. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I've been blessed in life to have a lot of different experiences in education.
And that's a strong point right there.
Well, you end up, you have so many subjects that come before you. You
Mm-hmm.
cannot be an expert in everything. So you're relying on others and that sort of thing. But if you have an open mind, you're talking, sometimes you're getting, because you have to vote, so you're asking people for information and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I really think that's it. And one of the things I'm most proud of is that people feel like they have a counselor that would at least listen to them. And sometimes you can't do anything about, the 13 people that vote or whatnot, but that you're at least listening and thinking about things and voting objectively.
Interesting.
All right, great. So wondering what you think any challenges going forward may be.
Oh, yeah.
You're the one who suggested that one.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think there's three main challenges that we're facing as a city and as a community and as the council, and they're interrelated. One is the funding capital projects and looking toward our bonding capacity. The other is controlling the growth and the cost of government doing business. Mm-hmm. And then the other is returning to normalcy. Mm-hmm. And I think they're all related. Mm-hmm. The cost of the Franklin Street School came in, and it's at like $62 million spread out over 40 years. So that's like double what Cross Street was, and that was growing, while we were watching basically nothing happen. Mm-hmm. But we've got to balance that over the fact that we've got to be either building or improving schools. We need a new police station. Mm-hmm. We've got millions of dollars in work on the levee system, and then we obviously have our roads and bridges. And there's other things, and then there's always the unexpected. So next year, or our next mayor will actually negotiate labor contracts and other future obligations. All of us in the entire community in Westfield need to realize that we cannot grow our way out of this problem by taxing residents or even growing businesses. we're adding good business and that sort of thing. But our obligations, unfunded mandates and that sort of thing, but the obligations that we have are growing faster than, let's say, new growth.
Mm-hmm.
So that's gobbling all of that up. So even though we're growing businesses and new growth might be from between 800,000 to...
And you're factoring Opeb into that? And
OPED is a big part of it, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And if you want these benefits to be there, and not have to lay people off, 10, 20 years from now,
Mm-hmm.
That has to be part of that negotiation so that you can't promise people more than you can deliver. And we're kind of getting to a place where we can't tax businesses or residents anymore.
Mm-hmm.
We can't build enough houses. The businesses, you could even add businesses, but what's your new growth revenue? You can't outspend that.
Mm-hmm.
And so that that clock's already been set. So this affects every city employee
Mm-hmm.
and everybody in the city that's going to pay taxes or live here.
What do you do about it?
You have to look at the numbers, and the numbers are reality. It's like doing your family budget. There's nothing mysterious about this.
Mm-hmm.
You can't, if you had your own business or you had a family budget, you can't be living like you're spending $100,000 a year, but you're only taking in $60,000.
Right.
You've got certain obligations. Let's say you're setting aside money for the future. These become obligations, but let's say you're saving to buy a new home or put your kids through college.
Mm-hmm.
If you were spending all that money on other stuff, you're not meeting those obligations that you want to do in the future or saving for retirement.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're saving for a lot of people's retirement, thousands of people.
Mm-hmm.
You can't promise what you can't deliver, right? The other problem is that you've got a government that wants to print its way. The bigger governments always get the smaller governments in trouble. So the notion that the state or the federal government is going to come in here and bail us out is wishful thinking at best.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And so we're going to be backed up by a government that's going to print more money, which devalues the currency. We've pretty much destroyed that.
Mm-hmm.
You add inflation. That hurts everybody, especially working people.
You just raised the limit.
Yeah, and right. We all went to school, and a big number times zero is still zero.
Correct.
Okay, so this affects all of us. Okay. And
I've got 30 seconds.
All right. I think that's we talked about it. It's all important, actually.
Mm-hmm.
It's all important stuff.
Yeah. All right. So, how many more months do you have left for your planting?
We actually have hoop houses. We'll be probably picking till the first or second week of November. The salad mixes, a lot of vegetables, bunching onions, and certain vegetables like cool weather.
Good.
And so we'll extend the season. We actually bought a greenhouse, and we're going to be able to extend and grow through the year.
All right, good. Started off with the gardening and ending with the gardening. Dan Alley, I want to thank you for coming in this morning and spending some time with us.
Well, thank you for having me. Thank you.
All right.
Studio 120 at Westfield Technical Academy. This is WCPC Channel 15 and 89.5 FM, WSKB Westfield.
Good morning, Westfield. It is 6:35. You're listening to WSKB 89.5 FM radio for the Westfield masses and WCPC Cable Channel 15. My name is Tina Gorman. I'm your Wake Up Wednesday host, and I am in the studio this morning with City Councilor, Ward 6 City Councilor Bill Oniski. Welcome.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Bill's waking up here. Pete and I have been up for forever. So this year we are doing interviews with the candidates, and most of the candidates are running unopposed, yourself included. So first of all, Bill, I want to say thank you for coming in, because clearly you don't have to worry about being reelected. But Pete and Ken Stomsky and I felt that it was really important for the voters to have an opportunity to hear from the people who represent them. And this was actually kind of fun, because in the past, when people are running against people, Ken and I always had the exact same questions, so that there was no favoritism. We were asking everyone the same thing. But in this case, we could, freewheel it a little bit, which has been fun. So I have my question. Of course, it was more work on my part, because it was like, okay, 3 different candidates, 3 different sets of questions. But I'm going to, the one question that I am asking all of the candidates that have come on the show, my opening question is, let's assume, because we do have people who have moved to Westfield since the last election. So let's assume that they don't know who Bill Oniski is. So I would like you to start by introducing yourself and just provide a little bit of background about your education and your professional experience.
Sure, it's not going to be that exciting, but I'll do my best, certainly.
Oh, come on,
My name is Bill Oniski, Ward 6 City Councilor. I was actually born in New Haven, Connecticut.
Okay.
Grew up in East Haven until I was about 12 years old. And then our family moved to Southwick.
Okay.
So I graduated Southwick High School and then went on to graduate from Westfield State College.
Mm-hmm.
After college, I moved to Westfield over on Northwest Road and married, 3 children, grown children. They're 26, 24, and 24.
Oh, wow. Oh, twins?
Yes.
Females, right?
Yeah.
Yes, that's right. I do
3
remember
daughters.
that. That's right. I remember.
I love them all to death. They're great.
3 girls must have been fun in the bathroom in your house, with everybody trying to get ready at the same time.
Yeah, there was some shouting matches, but, we pretty much divvied up our time. And actually, that would get me to work early in the mornings. I would go into my usual job, let's say, at supposed to be there for 8, but I'd get there early just to avoid everyone getting
You
up.
are not the first father that I've heard that who had daughters who said the same thing. It's like I would get in and out of the house before the drama started.
That's exactly what I did, and I still do it to this day.
There it is.
I still get up earlier than I need to. But so I moved to Westfield, Northwest Road, and then moved actually to my current address on Hillcrest Circle. During that time when my kids were younger, I ended up going for my MBA at UMass.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my educational background.
Yeah, that's a lot to do when you have children. Trying to go back for a master's is challenging.
It was, but it's not as bad as you might think. At the time, they had live classes.
Remember those days, Bill, when people were actually in a classroom together?
Yeah, I enjoyed that.
I did too.
I mean, I really did. I was, I was one of the older people in the classes at the time, in my 40s. And then, a lot of students right out of college would go right into their MBA.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, UMass was actually holding classes at Bay State.
Okay.
They had.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they had probably four classrooms there that they used for seminars for the hospital during the day, and then they rented it out to UMass, and then Holyoke Community they moved to. So I did a mix of hybrid.
Yeah.
Hybrid learning. Some was online, some was in class, but I definitely enjoyed the
and it's interesting, I think, when you go back to grad school and you are considered sort of a non-traditional student, although now I think that term probably isn't even used because everybody's non-traditional, but you definitely have, when you've been out in the work world, it's definitely different than a student who's gone right from undergraduate into a graduate program. And because I did the same thing. I worked for a while before I went back. And when I went back for my master's degree, you just feel like I'm here. I know what I need to learn. And, you're really soaking it all in. So, but it is a lot with children and a full-time job. So what is your job now? What are you doing now?
I work at Comark Communications in Southwick. It's actually owned by Hitachi. Our full name is Hitachi Kokusai Electric Comark.
Okay.
But where I work, we manufacture, design, and install television transmitters.
Okay.
So we're the equipment that we have is at the bottom of TV towers, essentially.
Okay.
It's a little hard to describe, but where you see like the Channel 22 tower,
yeah.
Down below there's a building, and we have the equipment in the building that transmits a signal, goes up essentially like a coax cable, except it's
Heliax. I know the equipment very well.
Yeah, well, we've got. I'm looking for you.
He's way back there. You
just
can't
the voice in your
ear. I
ear.
can see him. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, well, a lot of it's Heliax for the lower power, but this is mainly the hard copper coax. Anyway, we make the equipment that goes in there.
Okay.
And we sell it all across the country, all across the world. So we've got a lot of TV stations, and I'm in charge of our customer service group there, and project management and logistics.
Perfect. All right. Let's get into a little bit about what you do in your other job as city councilor. So now we know what you do professionally and that you've been in this area for a long time. So because you are the Ward 6 councilor, not an at-large councilor, I'm going to start with, in your opinion, Bill, what are some of the pressing issues that are unique to Ward 6? as opposed to some of the other wards. We heard Bridget was here last week. Bridget Matthews-Kane talked a little bit about what was unique to Ward 3. What's unique to Ward 6?
Well,
and by the way, where is Ward 6? Just kind of some outlying parameters, just so our listeners have a mental picture.
Sure. Generally, it's from Union Street north.
Okay.
Bordered by Route 20.
Okay.
And 10 and 202. There's a cutout where it's Ralph Figge's ward on Mosley Avenue. So one side of the street is Councillor Figge. One side is Ward 6.
Okay.
So that's a little cutout there, I guess. I mean, every ward is unique in its own way.
Sure.
Of course. And Ward 6 actually, has a juvenile detention center.
I didn't realize that was in Ward 6.
Yeah, right by the track. So
yeah.
Easy exit if you need to.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that is a little unique.
So we've got that right next to it, a hospital.
Yep, Western Mass Hospital.
Western Mass Hospital.
Yep,
which is huge, by the way. I mean, you look at it from the front, you say, okay, that's a good sized building, but you drive around back, it's a lot.
Yeah, and Bill, I'm glad you really brought up Western Mass Hospital because, of course, whenever we talk about a hospital in Westfield, we automatically think Bay State Noble Hospital. And Western Mass Hospital sometimes is kind of the forgotten hospital out there. So, again, I actually did not realize that was Ward 6. Okay.
Yep. And, we've got a morgue.
Yes, and I think a lot of people don't know that. So where is that for those listeners who don't know?
Sure, that's right on East Mountain Road also, right?
Across the street, right?
Across the street from Western Mass Hospital.
Mm-hmm.
We've got an airport.
Yep.
We've got Hampton Ponds.
Yeah.
State Park.
Yep.
Of course, and the airport I mentioned. So we've got industrial areas. We've got residential areas. So there's quite a bit there. So there's quite a lot of different synergies happening.
Okay.
So one of the problems there, or the resident complaints, is some of the trucking.
Mm-hmm.
You hear that quite a bit.
Yep.
So that's one of the problems there. You try to resolve things as best you can, and I think I'm doing a good job at it. I hope I am at least. So the thing with city council is you learn that there's two sides, and sometimes both are right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, I hear valid points from two sides all the time, and a city councilor needs to make a vote and make a decision based on what they feel is best, knowing that there are two people that are right, and you try to get somewhere in the middle. But, they say a good decision is one that makes both sides unhappy.
Yeah.
Means you made the right one.
Yeah, absolutely. So are there certain things as you pointed out, you've got some industrial over there. Obviously, you've got residential. You've got the airport. You've got all kinds of – are there certain things that have come up in the last couple of years that you really had to sort of advocate one way or the other just in terms of the Ward 6 residents?
Well, the airport's been a big deal there with the buyouts of homes and
what's happening? I hadn't even heard anything. That was a big deal a few years ago, and then it all kind of quieted down. So what's happening?
Sure. Well, right now, there's a company that's hired to oversee this, and they're in the process of redrawing a map. So every 5 years, they have to redraw a sound map.
Okay. Yep.
And depending on where the map falls, will dictate which houses are qualify for sound insulation, buyout, and a lot of that also has to deal with what the government grants are, what the federal government grants are, because the federal government pays 90%, state government 5%, and City of Westfield 5% for all this. So a lot of it's dictated by the funding from the U.S. government. So if there's no funding, you're not going to hear anything. If there's and in this case, they're redoing the map, so everything's kind of calm now.
Kind of quiet. So when if they end up doing a buyout, do they just tear the house down? Is that generally what happens with a buyout?
Yes, that's exactly what happens at the buyout, and then the city owns the property. So I mean, I advocate for trying to keep the houses up, the taxpayer rolls up, and make the sound insulation if you need to. some people love having no house next to them. I mean,
yes.
If you drive down Holyoke Road, initially you would see spaces, but now it looks natural. Mm-hmm. There'd be a house, lot, another house. Mm-hmm. So it looks natural now.
Yeah.
And a lot of people like having that little bit of open
a little
space.
Buffer. Yeah.
Other people don't. It's weird.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yep.
So, two different opinions. Same thing
exactly.
happening. An open lot next door to you.
Yep.
Some people love it. Some people don't like it.
Yeah. So, and I think that's a good example, as you were saying before, of, just looking at things differently. So since you brought up the airport, one of the questions that I had is you are liaison to the airport. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. So just so that our listeners, and I think a lot of our viewers and listeners may not realize that most of the city councilors, if not all of them, I'm not sure, are liaison to certain departments. And so and that just gives the department head sort of an avenue to the city council, just through a single person, which I find really helpful. So you are the liaison to Barnes Airport. So talk about your role as liaison.
Sure. What I try to do is learn as much as I can about it, really get into the details of it. So I'll attend their meetings. Mm-hmm. And there's going to be one Thursday, I believe. So I'll attend their meetings, and they're very, very kind there. They'll send me packages of all the information that the airport commissioners see, and I'll be able to look at it, review it before the meeting, and then discuss it at the meeting. So it's also very interesting. I mean, they use acronyms like you'll never believe.
I would. We all do. That's we all do. Every department does, and it's a matter of kind of learning them. And
I mean, taxiway Sierra, taxiway Bravo. You know where that is, Bill? I said no.
Tell me define what we're talking about here.
I don't, but I mean, there's a department. It's a city department. It's a city-owned airport, municipal airport. But most of their funding comes from the federal government. So they've had a lot of grants this year. There's a lot of work going on there. New taxiways. They're trying to build out some new hangars. So that's really an attraction, for certain aviation businesses. Chris Willingborg, the airport manager, should be coming back, I believe, today from a convention that focuses on airport businesses to try to draw some more business into the airport.
And Bill, I have two questions. One is, how many airport commissioners are there? Do you know?
There's 3.
There are 3 of them. And are there things that are happening or things that have happened over the last couple of years, this last term with you, that were controversial about the airport, or is everything pretty copacetic?
I would say it's all pretty good. I mean, what was odd is, the F-15s, when they take off, they make noise. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people were home during COVID.
Right.
So
didn't think of that.
No, nobody ever does. I didn't either. So I'd be getting calls. Well, these planes are taking off all the time, and I'm trying to have a Zoom meeting, and a plane's taking off, and I can't hear. So I would visit, the resident and explain, what was going on. And that's one of those things you just would not expect.
They're
not home during the day.
Right.
So they never hear it.
It's like basically what you're saying is, well, this is the way it's been for the last however many years. You just weren't around. The kids were in school. They didn't know it. You were at work. You didn't know it. Yeah. Didn't think about that.
No, it's one of those things.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, what's funny is that now that you bring that up is that we are, because we've been doing curbside lunches now for a year and a half. I too did not realize how often those jets go flying by, but when we're outside, for us, it never gets old. And for the seniors in line, we love it when they fly by and of course, you can't hear a blessed thing. I'm trying to have a conversation with somebody while we're doing meals and they're flying by, but we're all waving and everything. But, until I was outside every day for that 45-minute or hour time slot, I didn't realize how often they went over either, because when I'm inside and, my computer, I'm running around the senior center, they're flying over. I didn't really notice. But when you're outside, so yeah, I can see it when you're in the middle of a Zoom meeting and this thing's, shaking the windows.
Well, one resident that I know, he moved closer to the airport so he could see the planes.
Yeah.
So he wants the noise. Again, there's your two opposites. People want out, Some people want out, some people want in.
I'm telling you, my husband volunteered for us for many months when COVID first started, helping with the meal stuff. And Gary was like a little kid. He would be the one, like, let's buy a house right next to the airport so I could watch this and listen to it every day. I don't think it would ever get old for him. All right. So another role that you have, in addition to being the airport liaison, is you are also the chair of Legislative and Ordinance Committee. I think a lot of people don't know what, and there's an acronym, we say L&O, but tell us what the Legislative and Ordinance Committee does. Talk about your role as chair and sort of maybe some of the things that have come up in the last 2 years that were exciting or controversial or not.
Sure. Well, I mean, we've got a great L&O committee with Councilor Mike Burns and Councilor Jim Adams, who are really part of making it what I think is very successful. What we do there is take any ordinance that's going through, any legal type of issue that needs a vote, goes to our L&O committee, and I work with City Attorney Shanna Reed and bring in any department heads that are needed to explain what's going on. So, I mean, the process at City Council, if you're watching it on TV, especially for the first year even, it's confusing. So what happens is the mayor will propose an item, and then that item will go to L&O if it's a legislative and ordinance item, finance if it's finance. So it'll get divvied up into the subcommittee. So the L&O subcommittee, like I said, takes the legislative and ordinance type items, and then we start discussing it in great detail. So we'll bring in department heads. We'll ask questions, and we try to get the answers that we think other city councilors will want in front of full city council. So you're trying to always
think ahead.
You might know it, but you need to hear it from the department head. So as far as anything controversial, there's been marijuana places.
Oh, yeah. Sure.
All over the place. There really hasn't been too much that I can recall that's controversial, thankfully.
Yeah, right, exactly, and that's what you want. And again, just so our viewers understand the process, so if something goes to council that gets, and I'm going to use the Senior Citizen Tax Work-Off Program as an example because I was we were talking about that before you were on, and I said there were some changes that were done to the program while we were on hiatus last year because we didn't place any of the volunteers, and those changes were that we upped the amount of a tax credit that someone could get from $500 to $800. And in doing so, we lowered the number of total participants from 40 down to 25, but that and allowed us to, for those that are working, to make more, to earn more tax money credit. So that process, because the Senior Citizen Property Tax Work-Off Program is a city ordinance, and it was written in a certain way back 10 years ago, so I had to send that to my I think it was my liaisons. It was actually Councilor Figge and Councilor Adams that brought that to the council. So again, just so people understand the process. So the full city council isn't going to discuss it and look at it initially. It's going to go to a subcommittee. In this case, because we wanted to change, you have to change the ordinance, it had to go to the Legislative and Ordinance Committee. And so, as you said, Bill, then your committee took that, called me in, asked me, why are we doing this? What are the statistics? How is the program? How do you think this is going to benefit the program or the senior citizens, whatever? And then your committee makes a recommendation or not. I mean, you could, as a committee, you can vote it yes or no. If you vote it in either case, it's going back to the full council.
Yeah, it's
right?
just a recommendation.
It's just a recommendation. So your committee could have said, no, for a bunch of reasons. It's a 2-to-1 vote. We're not really recommending this. It goes back to the council, and as you said, so that you're reporting to the council on these are the questions we asked, these are the answers that we're given, and then the full council will take a vote. So sometimes you kind of know how things are going to go. Boy, sometimes you really don't know how things are going to go, right?
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, in this case, for instance, it was $500, or the work went from
500 to 800.
Right? Okay.
Yeah.
So in those cases, that's got a little bit of finance component in it.
Yep.
So typically what will happen is Councilor Figge is the chair of finance. So
Yep.
before the meeting, him and I will just quickly discuss, well, should we send this to finance or should we send it to legislature?
But in this case, because the total amount that the city budgets for the program wasn't changing at all, because in upping it to 800, we were decreasing the number of participants in order to keep the total. So there was really no budget change. And I think that's why and of course, Councilor Figge is my liaison. So he was, really familiar with all of that. So I think that's why it went to L&O and not finance, because they're, if we had been asking for more money, that would have been a different story.
Yeah, Councilor Figge and I, we'll talk about each of those as they come along.
Yeah.
And it works out really well. He'll take some into his finance committee.
Yep. And you'll take
and
some.
I'll take some into L&O.
And Bill, just because we only have a couple of minutes left, believe it or not, the time flies. What do you see as some of the challenges for the council in the upcoming, election term that you would serve? So FY22, FY23, anything that stands out in your mind as, we're going to have to tackle this one?
Well, yeah, there's the data center, of course, that's been the hot item.
Yep.
There's usually one or two of those a year. So that's coming in. I'm not going to talk in great detail on that, but it's a big project, and that's going to take up some time.
Yep.
And a lot of public input, which is which is great.
Yep.
Another company, I believe it's called James Hardy, is also in right now for a TIF, a tax incentive program, which will be a big company also off of I think it's Turnpike Industrial Road by the gas and electric. So that'll be another big deal. So there are people who want to come into Westfield. You hear so many negative things sometimes. However, you don't hear the positive aspects. People don't start praising, Westfield that it's good. Typically, only the negative things are brought up.
Yeah.
But when I'm walking around or with neighbors and friends, they love Westfield. They think everything is going very, very well. But it's the silent majority, I guess you'd say.
And you know what? That is a great note to end it on, because I think that you're right. I think there are, and periodically we'll hear some really nice things from people. My advice to them is generally pick up the phone and call the mayor. Let them know. Call your ward counselor and say, this has been terrific, or this worked really well for me. This worked well for my family, because we do like to know that there are people, but I agree with you, Bill. I think that's sometimes the silent majority. So Bill Oniski, Ward 6 City Councilor, running again this year. Everyone get out and vote. November 2nd is the election. Yes. So get out and vote. Bill, good luck.
Well, thank you, and thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
Absolutely welcome. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Oh, Pete was concerned that I had to fill a few minutes, Ralph. And, I said,
Pete should never be concerned
a few minutes. I can fill a few hours. All right. We have Ward 2, City Councilor Ralph Figge as my next candidate that I'm interviewing. You can put those headphones on there.
They're loud.
Oh, they are? Okay, hold on. I'll turn them down. Okay, how's that? Little sound check. Is that better? Or do you want it turned down a little bit?
A little bit more.
How's that? Better?
Perfect.
Okay, that's perfect.
Just like you, Tina.
Thank you. Oh, my gosh. Flattery will get you everywhere, Ralph.
Well, when you're late, you got to do something.
Okay, there it is. But you know what? We're just going to take a breath. And so, I had Councilor Oniski in, Ward 6 City Councilor Bill Oniski in, and last week I had Rick Sullivan and I had Bridget Matthews-Kane. Oh. I understand you and Councilor Matthews-Kane have a little thing going with this tree thing.
We do.
Right? Do a little contest. We'll talk about that later.
Perfect.
So because most of the city councilors are running unopposed, Ralph, I am asking all of you the first initial question. Then your questions are all a little bit different based on what you're doing. But, just for those people who are new to Westfield, we have people who have just moved here since the last election. They don't really know who all these candidates are. Introduce yourself. Talk a little bit about your educational and professional background.
Okay. My name is Ralph Figge, and I am retired from 25 years as a school counselor at Agawam High School. I have had many different jobs through the course of my work, and I continue to still be employed. Cutting back, though, recently we've had the addition of a granddaughter.
Oh, boy.
So that changes
Congratulations.
priorities a little bit.
It does.
It does.
It's funny how that happens, Ralph.
It is.
Suddenly all those
boom.
important work jobs are like, yeah, not so
Yeah.
much.
Well, I'm not mentoring at the vocational
Okay.
school anymore, so
Yep.
I cut that back. So basically, I'm doing the Jimmy Adams fill in whenever he needs any help at the funeral home and the city council work. So that's basically what I'm down to. So that's good.
Okay.
So I have a son who's a microsurgeon in Omaha, Nebraska, and I like to get out and visit him as well. So, so those are those things. I ran for city council 8 years ago.
Wow, has it been 8 years already?
It's been 8 years already.
Oh, my goodness.
This will be my 5th term.
Yep.
And I did that after I retired
Yes.
from my real job.
Yes.
And I don't know how these guys that have jobs
I know, right?
do it, because it takes a lot of time. Maybe it's because the committees I'm on are more demanding.
Yep.
But it certainly does take a lot of time. So.
And Ralph, you're the Ward 2 city councilor. So I posed this question to both Councilor Matthews Kane as well as Councilor Oniski. What are some of the pressing issues for your ward, your particular Ward 2?
I think continuing the services that the constituents in Ward 2 are used to having. Also,
And talk about where Ward 2 is for those who need a visual picture.
Ward 2 is part of downtown. It's the whole Pleasant South Maple Street area, up by Mill. It goes across the river into Dartmouth and Princeton. It's pretty much a downtown area. We have 3 out of the 4 public housing projects.
Okay. Yep.
In Ward 2.
Okay.
We have the senior center in Ward 2. So, and Ward 2 is one of the older sections of town.
So that gives people kind of a reference point.
Right. So it's got some unique issues similar to Ward 3.
Yeah.
Our sewers are 110 years old. Our water lines are 100 years old. So I've been trying to work with the city engineering department. Instead of building new things, we need to maintain the old things, and we need to start a program of replacing those. It's only a matter of time till they go. So I think infrastructure is one of the big issues. Senior services is another big issue. We have so many seniors in the ward.
Yeah.
Trees have been an issue lately.
So we've heard from Councilor Matthews Kane.
Yeah, well, she's only talked about the planting of them. I'm talking about the taking down of the old ones.
Yes, yes.
And it's great that she has spearheaded this group in order to get this grant into town. So
yeah, so to plant more trees. All right, so you are also, and we talked with Councilor Oniski last segment about his role as chair of the Legislative and Ordinance Committee, which is a big undertaking. You are chair of the Finance Committee, and I would say that rivals L&O. So talk to our viewers and our listeners, Ralph, about what exactly does the Finance Committee do, and then how is your role as chair, kind of address that a little bit.
Well, as chair of the Finance Committee, it's my job to set up all the agendas for all the finance subcommittees.
Okay.
And we meet twice a month for each council meeting. The mayor will send us a list of expenditures that he would like to do, and it's up to the council to approve those.
Okay.
So that all that work is done in committee. I have a fantastic committee. I have Councilor Matthews Kane and Councilor Sullivan, and we make up, I think, a very wide and diversified experiential background to go towards that. Probably the biggest thing we do is the annual budget. The mayor will submit a budget to the city council. It will then go to finance. Finance will set up a series of meetings where we'll invite department heads in to answer any questions about their budget, and then we need to either pass it the way it is or make some reductions. So far, we've been able to pretty much keep the services in the city at a constant level, which is my goal to do that. And we've had a couple good years in spite of COVID. We have more money in the bank now than we've ever had. We have $11 million in stabilization. We also have taxes. The rate we didn't increase 2.5% like we could every year. The increase in the tax bill was from the valuations. As everybody knows, real estate's gone crazy.
Oh, my goodness.
Your
That
house
is
is
for
worth
sure.
so much more now than it was last year.
Yeah.
And that results in a higher tax bill. But if you're using your home as an investment, you want that. You want your house to increase in value, not decrease.
Right, right.
You know, it's a two-edged
exactly.
sword.
Exactly.
You know?
Yep, exactly.
House is worth more, you got to pay more taxes.
Yeah,
so.
exactly.
So basically, that's what finance does. There's another committee, long-range finance, that should be looking at the big picture, where we're going to be in 10 years.
Okay.
So we're more the day-to-day operation.
Right.
We take care of the stuff that needs to get done to keep the city running.
So now, like Ralph, I see a lot on the city council agenda, or like the mayor will say, we want to move money from this, from this department or over here to pay for that. Does all of that go to the finance subcommittee?
It does.
Okay, so
It
you've
does.
got to look at all of those.
We
To
look
me,
at every-
it just seems like 10,000 little things
is.
of we're moving. In some cases, you're moving big chunks of money. In some cases, it's like, we want to move, $1,500 from here to here. And you're thinking $1,500? I mean,
Or $10.21
Yeah.
for a prior year bill.
yeah, right. Exactly.
Those are the big ones. According to our charter, the mayor can't spend any money unless the council approves it.
Yeah.
So if he wants to transfer anything within the budget, that has to come before the committee. So you're right. There's a lot of little housekeeping issues that keep us very busy.
Well, and some of the things that, and I can tell you as a department head, because we had an example of this that happened. We had a food vendor that we used that forgot to submit an invoice from last year. And, my principal clerk was going crazy going, it was like, $40 or whatever, whatever it was. And so of course she's frantically emailing Tammy saying, how do I do this? And Tammy said, well, if the purchase order is closed from last year, then it's got to go to council. It's like, you got to be kidding me. So it's going to go to council, then it's go to the finance committee and then back to council. And,
Yeah, on the last city council agenda, there was 12 items for finance, and 10 of them were prior year bills.
Yeah. And that is, sometimes, Ralph, that in defense of the departments, that is through no fault of ours. You try to stay on top of this. And I know at the end of the year, we are diligent, because I have a principal clerk who's diligent about this, reaching out to everybody. It's like, if you have any bills, get them to me in early June, because, once June 30th comes, I can't pay them.
Right.
But, every once in a while.
Well, we do pay our bills.
We do. Okay, so
yeah.
that's Finance Committee.
Yeah, that's finance.
What do you think have been, well, you know what, let me throw this one out to you. I usually save this for the end, but what do you think some of the challenges will be for this next term? Yeah.
That's a good one.
Where to start?
Where to
right?
start?
Well, we could,
Well, I think right now the biggest thing we have on our table is the data center.
Yep, Bill had mentioned that as well.
The data center is an opportunity for a developer to come in and work with 160 acres of very difficult to develop property. It's environmentally sensitive. We have eastern box turtles up there. And they have come in with a plan to do that. In return, they're looking for a 40-year deal. And, there's some pluses to it and there's some minuses to it. So I think as a council, we have to decide, is this a project we'd like to see go forward, or is this a project that we don't feel is right for Westfield? So I think that's going to be the biggest one.
That's a big deal.
Yeah, Monday night we have a finance committee meeting of the whole to discuss the whole process. We're on a 45-day clock.
Yeah, I was going to say there's got to be a time frame. This is, private industry. They're not going to let you, ponder this for the next 6 years.
No, we can't debate this and kick the can down the road like we do a lot of other things. But so we're going to have to take a good look at it. Councilor Flaherty has been taking it apart. He's been dissecting it very well. There's going to be some good questions asked, some good discussion, and hopefully we can come to a resolution within the near future on that. So.
Okay, so that's one big project. I'm going to throw out another one because you were on the front page of the Westfield News this morning about the police station. So talk a little bit about that, because I think that will also be kind of a hot topic.
Well, we have two capital projects coming down the road. The first is the elementary school that's been long coming.
Yeah. Oh my goodness!
It is
long
needed.
Coming.
Yeah, it is. It's been needed, It services the kids in wards 2 and 3.
Yep.
Our inner city kids. They deserve a school as nice as the kids in the suburbs, the surrounding areas of Westfield. Paper Mill and Munger Hill and all those, Highland. So that's going to be a major project with the cost of construction, materials.
Yeah, it's
It has
off the charts.
Ballooned.
Yeah.
That project, and it has gone from what we thought was a very manageable number that would allow us to do a lot of other things in the city to a number that's going to eat up a lot of our bonding capacity.
Yeah.
So that's one project to go along with the data center. But the other one is the police station. Now, the police station, in my opinion, 20 years ago should have been torn down. My wife's put all 33 years of her career in that building, and it was not healthy. At one point, they had 7 dehumidifiers running downstairs to handle the water, and the mold, it's been just bad. So I think that there's not much of a debate about the need for a new police station. And I think the council acted very wisely the other night when Councilor Adams asked me to do immediate consideration for the feasibility study to get that started, let's get moving on it. It's time to do it.
And Councillor Figge, and I think there was a question in the article today about why, like, what happened all of a sudden, because there was an incident that kind of brought this to the forefront.
Yeah, the State Department of Health came in and did a air quality study just like they did over at the courthouse in Springfield, and I think the courthouse in Springfield kind of jump-started the idea for it to work.
Yep.
And like I said on the floor, this is long overdue.
Yeah.
And at the end, after the council did do the immediate consideration for the authorization of $85,000, I did thank the council on behalf of all past and present police officers.
I saw that, and they put that in the article, which I thought was really good. And the other thing too that our viewers and listeners might be interested in. I mean, I know pre-COVID, just before COVID, I had been in conversation with Chief Valier because, of course, he had a lot of questions about the new senior center, which now is almost 6 years old. We'll celebrate our 6th anniversary this month, which in a couple of weeks, which is amazing. But we had a lot of questions about that whole process and so forth because we were looking at a new police station. I know I had talked to Councilor Adams about it.
Yep.
And there was a lot of talk about putting together a building committee. Chief Valier had asked, would that be something that you could, help with, just having been another department head who built a new building. So that was all in discussion, and then COVID hit, and then, everything went out the window. But it wasn't like this is the first that we're talking about this.
No, this has been talked about
for a long time.
Before I got on the council 8 years ago.
Yeah.
The need for a new police station has been discussed. We've sunk millions of dollars into that building.
Yeah.
We could have built a new one for all the repairs we've had. I mean, the garage doors or floors were falling down into the classroom.
Yep.
They can't park a cruiser in there anymore. Just the ventilation systems have never been right. It's had an issue with air quality forever. So a friend of mine who retired 12 years ago used to have sinus infections all the time. Since he retired, he hasn't had one. So I think things like that show that the need has been there, but it just hasn't been addressed.
And just to clarify, Ralph, so the money that you're asking for is for a feasibility study. And what is the goal of the feasibility study? What do you hope to get out of that?
We hope to find a location.
Yeah.
Number one is the location, and then we have to do whatever. If we find a location, then we have to do testing of that site to see what's underground.
Yep.
And that's all included in this. So,
And just again, so our viewers and listeners know, that's exactly what we had to do for the new senior center. We didn't just decide, okay, let's build it here.
No.
Oh my gosh, we looked at 12 different sites, and over the span of several years, because there was a study done, then that kind of got shelved for a while. Then I became director. Then Mayor Knappich said, all right, we're doing this now.
Yep.
So it was kind of like back to the drawing board. But there were a number of sites. They looked at renovating buildings. They looked at purchasing. There were a lot of things to consider. So that's why you have a feasibility study. And we did the same thing.
You did the same thing. We did the same thing for the new school.
Yep.
Every project has to start that way.
Yep.
Because until you find the location, is it appropriate? Where is it located? Is it in a residential neighborhood?
Right.
What are the pros and cons? And there are some things when you design a police station that need to be taken into consideration when you don't build something else.
Yeah.
You want to make sure they're not close to any industry that if they have a catastrophic event, that'll shut down your police station.
Yeah, right. You can't
don't
close
want
it.
buildings that are higher than your police station in case of snipers. I mean, these are the things that nobody thinks about,
Right.
and that's why you need a specific type of company to come in and do this feasibility study.
Yep, absolutely.
And there is a couple around. Chief Valier did take a few people down to Florida to check out a possibility before COVID.
Yep.
And so, I mean, this was moving even before COVID, and then it just the brakes just went on. So.
Yep, exactly. All right.
So-
So Ralph, what do you think? Can talk a little bit about what you consider to be some of the successes over the last couple of years since you've been on the council this last term.
Oh, this last term? Well, I
Yes.
was going to go back to 6 years ago with the senior center.
Well, you can do that. Go ahead.
I think that we have a state-of-the-art, futuristic senior center that it just serves the needs of our community so well. And I can't say enough about the staff. I think that's great. I think the biggest thing Westfield has is we have some quality people in key positions that keep this city moving. No matter what the leadership is, the city will continue to move forward. And I can't say enough thank yous to our city employees. And so that's important. I think the last year, the two balanced budgets that we've been able to pass, I think that's been good. Even though there's been no tax relief, it hasn't been the increases that it could be. That's something big. When Bill became chair of LNO, I used to be the chair of LNO. And
Right,
I had a couple of packages of things that I wanted to do in LNO that kind of have taken a back seat that hopefully we can revive. I really want to get an apartment registry in town. I want a registration system so every rental property, we know who to contact on a 24-hour basis.
Yep.
We also want to know who's supposed to be living in these places, because you got a lot of couch surfing going on.
Yeah.
You know.
Yep. Absolutely.
And
I feel like that's one of the ones that I feel like that's doable. You know what I mean? I don't feel like
it's very doable, and I wanted to tie it in with the building department to conduct our inspections of these rental properties, and which means we need to get another body in the building department. Yeah. We had budgeted that for this year. The problem is we're not finding anybody
it's the
willing
staffing.
to work.
Right, it's the staffing issues. Yeah, I know.
Is an issue.
I know.
I also think we got to re-establish the credibility of the political system. I think that Facebook has done such a number on allowing people to be so negative without getting the facts that I think you can see the evidence of it in this election.
Yeah.
You only have one ward that's contested. Your at-large people are not contested. Nobody is getting into it. Greenfield, I don't know if you saw in the paper this morning, has 7 open seats on the council with only 5 candidates.
Wow.
So I think people are really shying away.
Yeah.
They just don't want to put up with that, and nobody should have to.
Yeah.
So I think that's part of just reestablishing that we are here for the people that elect us to do what they want us to do. You know.
Ralph, we have just a couple minutes left, but you are, we talked with Bill because he is liaison to the airport. You are liaison to both the Council on Aging as well as the Westfield Schools. Talk about your roles in those two functions.
Well, I try to, as the liaison, I'm the person that the other counselors are supposed to go through if they have a question or an issue with that department. So for the Council on Aging, I attend the monthly meetings as best as I can, and just to keep my finger on the pulse of what's going on. I also think that as a liaison, it's my job when that budget comes in for that department to advocate for that budget, because I will have met with the director or the superintendent, and I know the budget, and I know that stuff. So as far as with the school department, that's almost a full-time job in itself.
Yeah.
School department's half the budget. It's half the city employees. It's big. and to try to stay on top of everything, especially now with COVID going on, vaccination requiring masks. It's just been something else. So those, I attend the school committee meetings, which takes up a lot of time.
I was going to say, your life of meetings, it just must be like one after another.
Yeah, it seems like every other week it's 4 nights a week.
Yeah,
so.
It has to be. All right, our time is up, my friend.
Yeah.
Counselor Figge, Ward 2.
Correct.
And, we, as you said, Ralph, I mean, we only have one contested election within the city council. Of course, we have a mayoral election.
Correct.
That is contested. But, we're just urging people to come out and vote on November 2nd.
Yep.
They're also looking for poll workers, by the way. So if anybody's interested in that, you can contact the city clerk's office. I have a flyer that we'll be handing out at the senior center because, again, looking for poll workers, and you do get paid for that. It's
you do.
one day, and
you don't have to work.
stipend.
You don't have to work the full 12 hours.
No.
You can break it down and work.
You work
so
one
many
shift
hours.
or another.
Yep.
So either the early shift or the later
late
shift.
So that's all good. And the last thing I'd like to say is anybody in Ward 2 that needs a tree, reach out to me because we have free trees in Ward 2, and we got to catch up to Ward 3.
Mm-hmm. I'm trying to get a tree. I'm trying to get Scott Hathaway to come out. I got a tree that is right near the exit now. That is huge, and we think it's. I've had a lot of seniors even say to me, "Tina, that tree is dead, and if that thing goes down, it's going down on the new senior center." So I'm trying to get Scott out there to just take a look see.
Well, if you need any help with that, give me a call. I'll give Scott a call.
Thank you, Counselor Figge.
That's what ward counselors do.
There it is. Okay, thank you so much. Have a great day. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you, and I apologize for being late once again.
No problem. We got it all in there, Ralph. You and I can talk fast. All right.
Studio 120 at Westfield Technical Academy. This is WCPC Channel 15 and 89.5 FM, WSKB Westfield.
Good morning, Westfield. It is 7:33. You're listening to WSKB 89.5 FM radio for the Westfield masses and WCPC Cable Channel 15. My name is Tina Gorman. I'm your Wake Up Wednesday host, and I'm in the studio this morning with the chairman of the board, Pete Coles, and my guest this last 25 minutes, is Mary Beth Berrien. She's a candidate for City Councilor Ward 1. So welcome, Mary Beth. We're excited to have a candidate who's running against someone because we, Ken Stomsky and I have been interviewing, a variety of candidates, but most of them are running unopposed. And Councilor Figge just talked a little bit about why he thinks that's happening. So I'm really excited to have a candidate that's running against someone else. So this is a real contest, folks. And I'm also excited that you're here because we don't know you. So this is not necessarily a familiar face. You are to some folks for various reasons, but I'm sure not to a lot of our viewers. So you're running for Ward 1 City Councilor. So, I actually threw this question out, Mary Beth, to all of the people, even the councilors who have been on the council for a while. We've had people move into Westfield who don't know any of you people.
Right.
And so this is the one question that everyone got asked. So introduce yourself, talk a little bit about your educational background and your professional background, just so that we kind of know who you are.
Okay, so I am Mary Beth Berrien, and I have lived in Westfield since April 26, 2002. That's when we closed on our house.
Okay.
I, for whatever reason, dates stick in my head. And I originally started off my adult career as a person in the medical field. I was an x-ray tech.
Okay.
And then the job started to dry up, and it really wasn't conducive to try to find per diem, and not, I had young children. I have three children. Okay. And I was like, well, I got into sales. And then in 2008, when the whole economy took a big nosedive and people weren't buying ads or anything like that, I said, well, I have my bachelor's degree in health science management. I'll go substitute and see. And I absolutely fell in love with it. My first job was at MCDI Safe High School in Springfield. Oh my gosh. The kids that were at that school really made me realize why I wanted to be a teacher. They just needed me. They needed somebody that cared about them. And actually, one of my students is still friends with me on Facebook, and he just turned 30.
Okay.
So I'm a little old here, I feel, and I was like, hey, happy birthday. And he's like, oh, my God, it's all because of you, Miss B. And those are the things that make you go, So after I started subbing, I said, well, I guess I should probably get licensed because that's what I had to do. So I went to AIC and I got my master's in special ed. I am a licensed biology, engineering, special ed teacher. And I worked in the city of Westfield for 6 years from 2012 to 2018 here at this school.
Oh, okay. At Westfield Technical Academy.
Yep. I taught engineering, physics, and forensics. And then I left in 2018 and went to Holyoke for a year, but they're in receivership. So the funding and everything is kind of funky. And they're like, hey, we can't afford you. I'm like, okay, that's fine. And I landed at Greenfield Commonwealth Virtual School. And I have been a virtual teacher for 3 years.
So Mary Beth, was the school that the virtual school that you're in now, this was pre-COVID virtual?
Yeah, so nothing changed for us. Our kids stayed in school the whole year. And
that makes sense to me now, because when you were saying before we went on air that you were teaching virtually, I thought to myself, wow, I thought just about everybody was back to in-person. But you were part of that.
Right. We teach from Berkshire County all the way to Provincetown.
Yep.
And we have students all across the Commonwealth. And in the interim during all of this, I ended up going and getting my certificate of advanced graduate studies in school leadership. So,
perfect. So tell us a little bit. I'm just curious as to what some of the challenges are for you now, because you've taught both in person here and elsewhere. And then now you've been teaching virtually for the last few years. What are some of the differences and the challenges? Do you find it harder to connect with students virtually than in person, or what would you say?
No,
not
I think
necessarily.
I think like some of the socialization that the students might not get in a virtual school versus a brick and mortar school are not as big as you would think, because pre-COVID we had get-togethers. So every month there was a student get-together where we would have, like the beginning of the year, we have an opening picnic. In September, we have a hike. In October, they go to a play. In, December, they did something. January, we went to the Museum of Science. So you actually get to see the kids and they get to interact with each other. But a lot of the students that we have are more comfortable being like at home.
Yeah.
We do deal with some students that have issues, whether it be medical, they can't go to school for whatever reason, or mental health issues, anxiety. And then we also have students that are like actors that are, going on different calls that they can't attend a regular brick and mortar school because it doesn't work for them for timing. And then we also have students that are like athletic Olympic hopefuls. We have some kids that play on the New England Revolution, on the AAA team. So, we had a graduate, I think it was last year or the year before, who is a figure skater. So, the students are not all, they're all different. They're just all different.
They're kind of non-traditional in whatever their unique way is, it sounds like.
Exactly. And I think the cool thing is, so this past Monday, I teach earth and space science now. So we got into gems and minerals, which is like my jam, So we were talking about geology and things like that. And I'm like, well, on Monday, I'm going to be going for a hike at Stanley Park with my dog and my husband. If anybody wants to join. It wasn't like a field trip, but, your parents have to come with you. And be there. And we're just going to walk around in the back and check out some of the geology and like maybe the dry creek beds or, talk about the different things. And I had 2 students and their parents show up and we walked around. So it's not that we don't have the interaction with students. One student came from Charlton, one came from Springfield.
Wow.
So,
So how many but you still have a set number in your classes virtually, right?
Right. Yeah. Okay. So, some of my chemistry classes, I have like 13 to 15. Earth and space science, I have like 39. 39. Forensics, I have 29. So it's chem honors is a little bit smaller of a class, but those are the kids that are like diving deeper into critical scientific thinking. So.
It sounds like a really interesting, and I actually know some people who have students who have gone through that program, and I agree with you that these are students with very different circumstances as to why this works for them and the going into the school thing didn't. And as you said, you're kind of all over the map with whether it's a physical problem, mental health issue, sports, career, whatever.
Oh, we have a musician that was playing with an orchestra too.
Yeah.
So,
you can definitely see that. So that's kind of a unique, and it sounds like you're more of the sort of sciencey, kind of hard sciencing kind of person in terms of what you've been teaching. Right. So, so let's talk about now that we know that background. And you obviously live in Ward 1.
I do.
So let's talk about have you ever served in public office before?
I was an elected official of the Board of Trustees at Stick. So kind of in that sense, yes. But never have I officially run outside of a college campus for a political office.
Okay. So let's talk about why that decision and why now.
So I don't know how many people are aware, but there is the progressive pride flag that gets flown in the city of Westfield. For the past few years, it's been put up in front of City Hall and on the green this past year in downtown Westfield. And it was brought to my attention that somebody was trying to stop it from being flown at all. So I was like, that's crazy. Why are we going to do this? I mean, I've had students come out to me because they can't come out to somebody else. So we need to let them know that their community supports them. And we need to protect these kids because there's a lot of mental health issues when you're gay and unaccepted, or when you're trans and unaccepted, or when you're non-binary and unaccepted. And when people don't affirm your gender and don't affirm who you are as a person. And I was like, this is ridiculous. I'm going to run for office because this stuff's got to stop. This has got to stop. And I just kind of said it off the cuff. And a couple people were like, hey, so I'm part of this committee. Can you come over here? And then they were like, hey, this is Mary Beth Berrien and she's running for Ward 1. And I went, oh, I guess it's official now, It was something that I had said. And I was like, either I'm going to run or I'm going to be a thorn in the side. So I might as well do both. So then that way I can, win, lose, or draw, I'm still going to be an advocate for human rights in the city and to make sure that nobody is considered other. And that's...
So Mary Beth, let me take that one step further and say, what was the impetus for Ward 1 versus an at-large city council seat?
So I live in Ward 1, and we have one of the only clean aquifers, and the environmental impact of, though the area around the aquifer is zoned industrial, that doesn't mean that we're going to put a chlorine plant there or a nuclear waste reclaiming facility. Industrial doesn't necessarily have to mean environmentally impactful. It can be eco-friendly. And so making sure that, the Yellowstone House Farm can still stay organic and not have to worry about, is their water tainted or polluted? And, those kind of things are important to me. I have 2 grandchildren that come and see me. My granddaughter I don't get to see often. But I have 2 young grandchildren, 11 and just born, 2 months on the 25th.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah. So, just to be able to have the open spaces and the Arm Brook area and places where the kids can go out and experience the nature that we have, at least the small amount that we have in Westfield, and not be afraid of stepping in a puddle and having your foot fizzle off. Or, I mean, that's a joke, but
I know.
But I mean, I don't want it to become a thing where I live up on the hill, up by the high school, and even further, I don't need it to become air polluted, congested, and water polluted. It's just not conducive to why people want to move to Westfield in the first place. They're trying to get rid of that out of their backyard. So
okay, so that was sort of the environmental piece that was why you opted for Ward 1. Well, you live there,
right?
So.
Well, I live there, right? That's what it is. When I thought about should I run at large or should I run Ward 1, I was like, you know what? I think we have enough people that are ward representatives that are at large in the long run.
Yep.
So we really need somebody to be a voice for Ward 1, and we really need somebody that's going to stand up for Ward 1 and the issues that Ward 1 could face.
Okay. And, I had Councillor Matthews Kane on the show last week, and this was her first term, this past term. And we talked a little bit about the learning curve that new city councilors go through, because there's a lot of procedural stuff. I mean, and department heads go through the same thing. It's like, well, you can't do that. This has to go to council, and this has to go to committee, and this has to go to your board. And it's like, blah. So I guess one of my questions is, how familiar are you with all the procedural the council procedural?
So, Marianne Babinski, who was counselor for Ward 1.
She was.
When she found out I was running, she was like, hey, what can I do to help? So,
nice.
you know, I've been reaching out to people that are like, you know, guiding me on things like, oh, you can't just do this. You have to do it this way. You know, finding out how when, for instance, the data center that they want to put up there, or even Old Dominion, when they initially did their site plan, now they came back and said, hey, we want to do this. And it originally in the site plan, they weren't going to do it. And now they want to do this, but they want to put thousands of gallons of diesel fuel almost on the aquifer and in a storage thing. It doesn't make sense. Like, so, you know, that's.
So procedurally, to go back to that question, so you're, so Marianne's been, former Ward 1, former counselor Ward 1, Marianne Babinski's been kind of guiding you, which is super helpful.
Almost like a mentor.
Because there, a lot of times I think candidates run, and I've seen this with a number of candidates over the year, and they're, you know, incredibly enthusiastic and very bright, and they have great ideas. And, you know, then, and I've dealt with it as a department head. I'll go into I can remember going into a financial subcommittee. And I'm going, okay, well, we need to do this. And, you know, I've got a counselor saying to me, that's ridiculous. That's way too much money and blah, blah, blah. You know, in private industry, you could do it. Right, but we're not private industry, and because you're a municipality, there are certain rules and guidelines.
You have to follow bids and all this other stuff.
Exactly, you have to do all of this stuff. And does it cost more money? Yes, it does.
Right.
Unfortunately, that is the system that it's not just our municipalities.
Right, it's everyone.
That's the other thing, and I'm always trying to say, it's not just Westfield, folks. It's all of the cities and towns. We're all dealing with the same thing. So great to know that you've got somebody who's mentoring you and sort of guiding you through that process, because I think that's really important. Discuss what you think, Mary Beth, are some of the successes of the council that we have on now. So over the last couple of years, and I know sometimes with candidates, they're running because they see a variety of problems, and we'll get to that.
Right.
But let's talk about, are there successes that you can see?
I think some of the successes that we have are that we've really worked on getting some of the infrastructure issues dealt with and worked with. A lot of the beautification of Westfield, though it does go through city council, and it's usually from private citizens trying to apply for, you know, CPAC grants, CPA grants and stuff like that. The proactiveness that I've seen from most of the council to make Westfield a place where people do want to be here has been probably one of the most positives. I do know that there are, you know, issues that the councilors that want to do things in the better way and make things better get the roadblocks in front of them because of procedure, because of lowest bid, because of whatever. And though they don't actually get what they want done, they're working on steps to get what they want done. So, you know, exactly. I do think that for the most part, most of the city councilors that I've interacted with or that I've, you know, seen or checked voting records and stuff, they really do want to do better for the city. And they are in the right mode, for lack of a better word, but they just it's a process.
Well, it is, and I like the fact that you brought up sort of that trying to be proactive, because I think as a department head, you know, that's what you try to do. You try to be proactive. You try to look ahead and say, where do we want to be in 2 years? Where do we want to be in 6 months? Where do we want to be in 5 years?
Right.
And sort of how do we get there? Because some of those processes take a long time. And you know that. I think the other thing too is sometimes it's timing. You know, sometimes it's like you've been trying. I can tell you there are projects that I've worked on for years and I just thought, oh, we're never going to get there. And then suddenly something happens with another department and it opens it up and it's like, whoa, we can dovetail and do this together. And suddenly, you know, there we are. So I think it's being open to what else is out there, thinking outside of the box and so forth. But so what do you see as, now that we've talked about some of the positives and that sort of being proactive, but what do you see as a whole some of the challenges. And I've asked this to all of the candidates that this next coming set of city councilors is going to have to deal with.
Right. Well, I can tell you that some of the challenges that I find and some of the onus of my running are, Westfield infrastructure. We do really need to be planning better and be more proactive versus reactive. Yeah. We need to understand that, for instance, the police department and the teachers, once they retire, there's money that they are supposed to be getting paid. And, how are they going to do that? How are they going to maintain that? And what can we do now to set that foundation to allow these teachers who have put in 35, 40 years in the district or whatever they put in and let them have their pension and go on to retire and do their things. Police officers as well. And I think coming into a new city council as a city council member, for me, it would be like trying to see where everybody falls on this and trying to get consensus on, hey, can we do something a little bit more proactive versus being reactive? Like, I know one of the, environmental justice communities right by the Pike, they're dealing with the traffic from the Pike every day, whether it's getting on the Pike or getting off the Pike. And, the trees have been cut down and the, air quality is probably not that good. And they're an environmental justice community, which is law now that they have to be represented and engaged with. So, being that they're in my ward, I would be proactively working with them to find out what are some things that we can do to help alleviate this. Like, I know that they've not recently, but within the past few years, have made it a one-way driving through there. So people don't cut off a Southampton road, cut through to get up in front of the line, to make it safer for the kids that are in the apartment complex. And I think we need to really start looking at the infrastructure that we have and can we keep maintaining, even though it is industrial, putting new businesses up there that might have a couple hundred people coming in every day. We already are pretty much at the limit in capacity now. So what can we do to try to fix this? And that's, some of the things that I see as challenges and how can I, as a Ward 1 representative, best represent the wants and needs of the people that live in Ward 1 besides myself. This isn't just about me. This is about the collective unit of Ward 1.
And, just, and again, I've asked some of the other ward councilors or those that are running again, where, and I should have started with this, but where are the parameters of Ward 1? Like what's included in, so that people have a visual of kind of what part of the city?
Okay. So if you are leaving the city heading towards the Mass Pike, the bridge to your left, from that green bridge all the way up past the airport on the left.
Okay.
So it's 1A and 1B.
Okay. So that's all Ward 1. Mary Beth, we talked with, I was just talking with Councilors Oniski and Figge about the committees that they're on. Councilor Figge is chair of the Finance Committee, Councilor Oniski, chair of the Legislative and Ordinance Committee. There are a number of subcommittees. Have you thought at all about, and of course, you don't necessarily get to choose exactly where you want to be, but I think I think the council president likes to try to kind of put people where they can, be the most effective. So are there any committees that you sort of see yourself on or you would envision yourself being on or would like to be on?
I don't really see any committees that I would like. I don't know how many there are, and I don't know like all of the committees. There's committee, subcommittee. Yeah. So like trying to find out which one would be more aligned with what my views are and what I would like to do. I do know that the Ordinance Committee would be one that I think would be beneficial, at least for Ward 1, because even if, people come into us with, this is what our idea is, well, then at that point inside that committee, then you can work on what is really expected and get a good plan that's going to go forward to the city council, or say, hey, this isn't something we think we should be doing, and what can we do to fix this and make it better? So I think the planning board does a good job of it, but I think that once the planning board then gives the people the things that they need to come to us with it, then that's where that disconnect sometimes happens too. So being aware of the different boards that are out there, let
Yeah.
alone just the committees,
Yeah.
and being proactive in what they're doing and understanding, like, where do you go to find this information?
Yeah.
Not many people know if you go to the City of Westfield website and go to the city council and then look up the planning board, you can find out pending applications.
Yeah.
And how is this going to impact you and where you live,
Mhm.
whether it's Ward 1 or Ward 6 or.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have about 3 or 4 minutes left, Mary Beth. And yeah, I know the time goes well. The Councilor Oniski said the same thing. He's like, what? So, again, because you are the one person running who, for the council anyway, that, we don't really know. You've got a few minutes to just, what would you like the public to know? What would you like to say? This is your opportunity.
Well, I just want them to know, when I took out my papers, I only took out my papers for Ward 1. I didn't hedge my bets and go, oh, well, maybe I'll do this too. No, I wanted to represent where I lived, and I wanted the people that are in our area to know that I was there for them. I was not there for me just to have a council seat. That wasn't what this was about. This is really about make sure that we maintain Ward 1 and all of the beautiful open areas that we have, and just making sure that we're represented with a voice that will speak up and say, hey, no, we're not doing that. We need to talk about this a different way because this is not going to happen here. Let's work on that. And I think they need somebody that is going to be active in progressing what we want to do in Ward 1. So yeah, we're industrial up there by the airport. Sure, fine. So what can we do up there that's going to help and benefit not only Ward 1, but the rest of the city?
Mm-hmm.
Because, obviously the ward doesn't just get to keep the money from the ward, you know what I mean?
Exactly,
Which would be
yeah.
really nice because then everybody would get all the things. But, but taking into account how this will impact Ward 1 and how it will impact the city and what's the benefit.
Mm-hmm.
Cost effectiveness, sure, we can get something that's going to bring in millions of dollars, but is it really going to be good for the city?
Mm-hmm.
Are we going to end up having areas where people are like, yeah, no, you don't want to live over there? I mean, take, for instance, Monsanto. People don't want to live by Monsanto. So what's happening? You're getting all of these little areas that are popping up that are, environmental justice communities, but now they're being stuck by a facility. So, we don't want to do stuff like that to our town.
So again, I think being proactive, being environmentally sound. It sounds like those are some of your major issues.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Infrastructure.
I don't want to
human
speak
rights.
for you, but
No.
I'm trying to summarize because that's what I'm hearing.
Right. So the environment, human rights, the infrastructure, and education. We need to make sure that the schools are good. That as a teacher, I want to make sure that the teachers have what they need. The school buildings have what they need. Are they doing things in a proactive way for the students? Are they offering different things for students to do? Mm-hmm. This is a great school. The shops that are here are fantastic. Not every kid has to go to college.
Yeah.
Not every kid wants to go to college.
Yep.
And, a career in technical education is fantastic.
Yeah.
I have a couple students. One student graduated from culinary. They just bought a house. I have another student that graduated from construction, and they've been living on their own for a few years now. So, the CTE part, they're able to buy houses without having to have crushing student loan debt. So kudos